Yay. Success. Success. Hi, everyone.
So good to see you.
I know, isn't it? Here we're thinking it's the most normal thing to connect, and then suddenly we don't connect, and it's like, oh well, I guess it's not a given, huh? All right, let me keep bringing everyone in.
Morning, Diana.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. So nice to see everyone. I mean, I'm not going to begrudge this city to get some rain or some storm. We always want that, but yeah, we have so bad that our communications go down when things like that happen. But oh well. I remember I was so ready to make a joke every time it rains like that, and we have classes in real life. It's empty. No one comes. And I always make a joke, that people don't, humans don't melt in Santa Barbara. We don't know. We don't go out into the sun. Every time it rains, the classes in real life are empty. And I was about to make a joke about, hey, we can't, complain about rain anymore. And then this storm and whatnot makes me not be able to connect. So I guess we can still blame rain. I guess we still can blame rain. So how's everyone doing?
Good. Okay.
So nice to see you. I mean, really, now that I know what it's like to not be able to see you, can y'all go into the chat, open up the chat and give a little hello. A little hello to things. There we go. So let's go ahead and jump in. I'm gonna hold on. Two things. I was reading a note I made myself here. Before we go much further, I want to talk about the way to make that time up. I mean, I officially don't have to make it up, but I feel like there's so much we need to learn that I don't want to leave you guys with less time. So I can't add another day because of this whole, we can't make something up, people who can't come, and this is supposed to be graded and da. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, and I mentioned it in the email, I don't know how many read my long emails, maybe you don't read all the way, but I'm going to add 15 minutes to the end of each class. And then I know that means some people have to leave, that they can't stay for those 15 minutes because, you have lives and you have a plan and you have a schedule. But the good news is that we record these classes. So if worst case scenario, you need to go in and at some point review the last 15 minutes of a recording. I feel that that's gonna work better than just losing a whole day's worth of doing stuff. Okay. So so instead of finishing at 11:30, I'm gonna plan on 11:45. All right. I'm gonna do my best to finish the meat of all the new stuff by 11:30 for those who do need to leave, but then keep practicing and working on stuff the last 15 minutes. So unless you have something really not okay or not welcoming around that, you can email me and we can talk. But other than that, that's my plan to hopefully be able to deliver a lot of the content to you all. And I know that unless you want to say something right now, but a lot of people who do want to say something negative might not want to say it right now. So please email me and tell me your opinion if you don't feel like speaking up about it. But that's the plan. And then I have something else happening today, which I have to explain. I'm expecting a call today that I have to take. It's some results that I cannot miss. And they promised to call between 10 and 12, which is this wide time. And I kept saying, can you call after 11:30? And there's no way I could change that. So I'm going to not give us a break. And then I have my phone next to me. And then when the phone rings, the moment that call comes in, I'm going to give us a 15-minute break. Does that make sense? Now, my fear, since they have 10 to 12 to call, my fear is that we might go a long time without a break and that they might not call till later, but I can't gamble on that, and I don't want to give you guys a whole half hour. So, excuse me, that's how things happen. I cannot not pick up the phone for this call. So if you guys need in between to leave to go to the restroom or do something, just let me know, take off and come back. And then whenever I pick up the phone call, I'll tell you guys, okay, guys, 15 minutes, no matter where in the middle we're at, and everyone just kind of do your break until that time. Okay, is that remind myself to repeat this when whenever that call happens, but I just wanted to know. All right, so let's get going. I am going to open up my Photoshop. I'm sharing my screen while I'm doing this. If anyone has any anything they want to share about anything great they've been doing with Photoshop over the last couple of weeks. I know that a couple of you have been buying the subscription to the program. If you did that, make sure that you downloaded the photos onto your computer, because you won't be able to get them through when you own your own version. You can't get them through VDI. So now I'm heading into to vmview.sbcc.edu. And one thing I wanted to say about this portion, those of you who do use VDI, I've heard from quite a few students who were having iffy connections with VDI who kept dropping out. I've heard that they've been installing, they go here to the left and you install it as a software on your computer, and then you open it from there and it seems to be more stable. Okay, so for people who are having issues with it being that, like if in the middle of the class you're dropping out of the VDI or things like that, consider doing that. Not now, because now if you install it, I mean, now I want to just move in, but in between, I've heard 2 or 3 people say that worked for them. So for now in class, we're still going to go to that, but consider doing that after class or during the break if you don't take breaks or things like that. Okay.
Yeah, that worked for us before we got our own version. We downloaded. Plus, I'm doing it on a small laptop, and it filled the whole screen as opposed to show extra
The
stuff at the
other
top.
stuff.
Easier.
Okay. So here's student desktop. That, yeah. Oh, and you were one of the ones who told me that. But a couple of the people and people from my Illustrator class have said that too. So so yeah, I can't because I have to demo it. But other than that, I welcome you guys to do it. All right. Oof. I was freezing this morning and I just turned on the heater and now I'm boiling because I have a heater vent right above my head. So when the heater starts running, it just like my head gets boiling, but then it dissipates. So for during the moment that the heater is running, which it is right now, I get, oh, sorry, let someone more in. There we go. All right. So someone has their second computer with turn your second display off. All right. And then now that we're in here, we're going to open, remember, Bridge and Photoshop. So we're going to click on this little guy and I'm going to type Bridge and run Adobe Bridge 2020. Oh, I forgot. This is the part that I want to show you. I had signed out correctly from Google Drive last time, so I get the choice to sign in. But if you don't get the choice to sign in, then you need to go down, say that this doesn't appear for you, then you need to go down to this little bottom right. Let me move my mouse over, put the little colorful tip on the mouse. Here we go. Go down here and click on this little up arrow and click on the little Google icon. And if you don't get the sign in, it's because you need to disconnect. So you need to actually go over here to this and go to the preferences and disconnect. Right here, you'll see a disconnect account. But if you had disconnected, once you disconnect, you get the sign in again. Okay. And this is the entire SVCC pipeline at svcc.edu. Okay. The other way to open a program, you go down to this little start icon where we have all of them right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open Photoshop 2020. Oh, how interesting. Over the weekend, they moved up to Adobe 2021. Not even on Wednesday. I thought Illustrator, it was still 2020. And they've moved up to versions 2021. All right, well, there you go. We had version 2020 a few days ago, and now we're in version 2021. So Photoshop is opening and Bridge is opening. That's why 2020 didn't open, because it wasn't in the 2021. All right, so while these two programs are setting themselves up, I want to welcome a couple of people showed up before I, do you want to look at import preferences? So when you open, just so you know, when you change versions, which we just did, unknowing to me that it was going to be new, it asks you whether you want to bring in the same information you had before. And yeah, you kind of, any preferences you had chosen as stuff you want them to stay. So I just said yes to that. Now, Photoshop is open in the background, opening. And so again, since it's new, so those of you who are on VDI, I wasn't expecting this because on Wednesday, I taught Illustrator and everything was still 2020. So when you install something new, it tries to tell you, hey, this is everything that's new on your new version. So I'm going to go ahead and we're not going to read this right now. So if you see a little X, get rid of it. And it did forget all of the file. It forgets where all the stuff is for the first time. So remember, Photoshop down here, Bridge down here, and Bridge again comes in like kind of small, floating above the program. Same thing here, close, it tries to teach us the new stuff. So go over here to the top of Bridge and choose the maximize so that it also fills your screen like that. And now we have Photoshop filling our screen. If I go over here, and Bridge filling our screen, if I click over here, okay? So now I have both of my programs set up. Now, you might not be in the right images. You might, who knows where you'll be. If you are in the right photos, that's fine. But if you did just open up Bridge for the first time since it updated, then here on the left, we're gonna go find the photos. And for those of you who are using your own versions at home, your own versions of the subscription, then you have to click on wherever you put them. Maybe you put them in the documents, maybe you left them still in the downloads, and maybe you moved them to the desktop, which I hope you didn't if you have a Mac. But for those of us who are on VDI, we have to go to the word this PC and then go to the third choice, which is Google Drive. So we'll double click on Google Drive. And then here, we're going to go to shared drives. And then you will only have whatever classes you're in with me in here. So I'm the one that you should see be seen is called Photoshop Shared Drive. So I'm going to double click on Photoshop Shared Drive. And then here we'll go to Photoshop class files. Now I'm having to do this again to show you because we updated Bridge and all that, but that's it. Next time we open Bridge, we'll be here like I was already. Like you don't need to keep doing this each time if you've gone here once. All right, how's it going? Remember I said I'd give someone a hand for the first few minutes if you needed a hand. Is everyone right here? I didn't want to scare a lot of people off, but I just wanted people to know I can't keep spending hours helping people. So hopefully you can, if you're not here right now is the time to ask me if you got left behind on this process. Nope. Okay. I do notice that some people aren't here. I hope they didn't scare too many people off, but oh well, with my last email. Let's go ahead and open up, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go down and scroll to the S's. And we're gonna look for the file called Straighten Cocktails, and it's this guy here with three little, I don't know, drinks of some kind. Anyone who understands drinks can describe what they are. And before I double click to open it, over on the right, remember that if you haven't yet changed, you might be just on this publish and you might want to click on the preview. And that little preview lets you see a little slightly bigger version of it. Now, that has certain utility and stuff. We're not gonna, for focus and stuff like that. But the important thing here always is to have an idea of what we're opening up. In the last email, I sent you a file that I showed you how, that I told you could get from the home, from the homework, or that you can get from the attachment that I sent called the new pixels and resolution and stuff like that. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go check the last email I sent where I attached a file. I want you guys to read that. So and next time we meet, you'll have a grounding of understanding of resolution if it's the first time you've read that, so that when I talk about resolution, I can go deeper into the conversation. Now, and today, all I'm going to say is that this version of photo that we're opening right now has only 960 by 672, means how many pixels per side. So the bottom of this image is the longer number, 960 pixels, and 672 is the height of how many pixels this image has. And the pixels are that smallest component, like a cell of a photograph. We're going to check out the pixels in a minute, but it's important to know and to begin to look at the numbers to have an idea. And so this is a very, very small file. It's 135 KB. It's very low res. It's probably an image that can only be used for the web. It would never be something you could print. Okay, so just to begin to explore the idea of how many pixels you need here to consider printing something. Okay, so let's double click on this so that it opens up. And it's a JPEG file. And when you're in Bridge and you double click a JPEG file knows to open up in Bridge, in Photoshop, I'm sorry. Heater, turn off. I'm getting blasted. Well, this is pretty slow. The new Photoshop. It's kind of stuck in that, showing me one window. Is anyone else having problems with their Photoshop?
Mine opened, but it took about, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds.
Wow. There it is. Maybe, hopefully it's just because it's the first time and it's trying to figure things out, because this is quite crazy. All right. Okay. So the file opened up. It's, as you can see, it's a little block in the middle of my black space. And if I look down here on the very bottom left corner, there's a number here that says 100%. 100% meaning this is showing me the entire image. It doesn't mean it's showing me 100% of the image. It's not that. It's showing me the image at 100% zooming in or out kind of thing. What it kind of means is that this is as good as it's going to get. This is as good as you're going to see this image. All images have to be viewed at 100% in order to see whether they truly are good quality. If they are in focus, if they are an image that's worth continuing to work with. And when you have a very small image, like I said, this one was resolution wise, meaning total pixels, 100% shows you a very small image here. It doesn't even fill my screen. Other photos, when you open them up 100%, might show you just the eye of the portrait of the woman, because 100% means that it needs to zoom in. We'll see that when we open a bigger one. So right now, notice that here it's just showing me information about the photo. It tells me 960 by 62, 120 PPI. We'll understand more about this as I slowly explain more. But here we go. We have an image that is a bit crooked. As you can see, the horizon line is a bit crooked, so we're going to have to fix that. And it's got a bunch of colors. We're going to play with some with colors and with straightening. Some of the basic things you need to do to photograph when you open it up in Photoshop is look at its one of the first things you would do, in fact, is straighten it if it's not straight. And then depending on what you're looking for as your final image, you might need to crop it. Once you're done with those two, then you can start trying to fix it in one way or another. So the first thing I wanted to say is that let's go visit those pixels. We're gonna zoom in and out. I'm not sure if we got to zoom in and out last week. I believe we didn't zoom in and out of the image. Well, we didn't do anything last week. I'm talking about the week before. So we're going to be learning how to use some shortcuts that are very important. And if you are on a Mac, then the key that you need to look at your keyboard is the command key, and it's on both sides of your space bar. There's a thing that says command. And if you're on a PC, the key that we want is the control key. Now I know on the Mac, there's a key called the control key too, but don't use it on the Mac. It's a different thing. So PC users, find your control key. VDI users, you are on a PC. This is a PC computer. Even if you're on a Mac at home, this thing is a PC computer you're on if you're on VDI. So VDI Mac users also use your control key. So for PCs, it's control. For Macs, it's command. So go hold down your control key, keep it held down. And now you go to find the plus sign, the one, plus and minus, up like where you write the dash and the equals, up by the delete key, by the backspace key. And with control or command held down, then you start, you're going to start being able to zoom in and out of this image. So we're going to go control plus, 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 and we begin zooming in. And control minus zooms us out even further than we are. And this is what I meant by zooming in and out. So look at this percentage number here. And now I've zoomed out and now it says 33%. I haven't changed anything about the image. It's just how I see it. So this number is just how I, user, am seeing it. It's not yet the image changing size or anything like that. And so when you are viewing this up, keep going control plus, 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 or command plus, plus, plus a bunch of times. And as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, so now I'm at 1200%, I'm beginning to see those pixels that I was talking about. So keep going control plus, plus, until you see a whole bunches of boxes. And that's your pixels. Now,
I'm
yeah.
sorry to bother you.
Mhm.
I could not find this image. I downloaded the file and I just can't find it in order to open it.
It's missing, you're missing the straighten, huh?
Yeah,
you
the one
down-
you're working on right now. I just can't.
Yeah, and you downloaded the entire folder. I didn't add anything new. Does anyone, oh, are you sure you don't have last session's
It says
photos?
2021.
Okay. Anyone else at home who doesn't see this image?
I didn't get the image either. I got a different array. So could you go back to, I do this PC, Google Drive, and
You said it was under I, or with an I?
No, with the S for straighten,
Ah, okay.
S for straighten. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Great.
I so wanted to get into the Photoshop that in the email I said, you guys, we're not going to, but please stop me for questions like this. Totally. I just didn't want to spend 2 hours getting into Photoshop, but please ask me the moment something's wrong ahead of time. So you both found it? Okay, great. So yeah.
so Diana, this is Ken. So I did Google Drive, this PC, Google Drive, shared drives, Photoshop shared drive. Is that the sequence?
Photoshop shared drives, perfect. And then Photoshop class files.
Right.
The top left folder. Double click on that one.
Okay.
And there you are. And now when they all appear, the first time they take a little time, scroll all the way down to the bottom because they're in alphabetical order and the S is pretty low down there. And it's straighten cocktails.
Let's see.
Okay, is it showing up or not?
Let me see.
You could view by list.
Or you could view by
I
list and just see the numbers.
uh,
Usually it's easier to see the two. You can also make the images appear smaller or bigger here. So you could go to this minus and this plus and just click the plus sign a bit and zoom it up so that you can read or see
Oh,
the
I
images
see.
better.
Yeah, I've got it now.
And then you can see things a bit better.
Okay.
Okay, so
I've
I'm
got it.
actually gonna make mine a little bit bigger so that you guys can see name and shape next time. Okay? All right. Cool. So now I'm gonna head back to the Photoshop. Remember just how easy it is to go back and forth programs just by clicking on this. Some people insist on closing things and moving things around, especially if you're in a Mac, and you don't need to. You can just always use the bar, the dock down here, or the taskbar for the PC to move around. Okay, so now when we're zoomed in into an image, what if I wanted to see that first drink to see if it's, for some reason it's color, it's pixels or something. So when you're zoomed into something and you want to move around, we need to do something called panning. And how you do that is you go to the space bar, hold down your space bar, and you get a little hand at the tip of your mouse when you hold down the space bar. See that? Now you can click and drag and click and drag and move yourself around that image. Okay. So now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to keep zooming in a little bit more. So again, Control plus. And I wanted to show you our good old friends, the pixels. They have one color per pixel. So even when you see a very even color like this dark red, there's some darker ones and some lighter ones. But for the most part, and I'm going to scooch over to over here where you start seeing this shine. I'm going to have to go a little bit. It's going so slow that I'm going to have to scooch down a bit to here. Notice when you start having color varieties that are huge. Like it's gonna matter when we start doing selections for with color to understand that in order to get a color, Photoshop has to put in many different. Okay, guys, this might be that call.
Okay.
Shit. I don't know how to, answer that phone call. Oh my God, did I miss it? Hi. That is really bad. Please, I hope they call again. Okay. I hope they try one more time. My phone was out. I started hearing it through my headsets and I didn't. Oh, well.
Can you call them back?
No. Well, I hope to give it a second try. Yeah. Actually, I had the phone app open, but because of that, I couldn't answer the call. Well, okay, let's keep going because I can't do anything about it unless they call again. All right, so here we have all the pixels, and I just wanted to show you the variety of each pixel can only have one color, but what Photoshop does is in order to give us a sense of shape and roundness and shadows and stuff like that, it needs to put a whole bunch of them together. Now, I already told you this is an image with very few pixels, right? I mentioned down here, if you look at 960 by 672, there's very few pixels, and you don't know yet how much is very few, very little if you've never looked at a pixel before, but this is very few for an image. So consider that to show this little transition from darkness to shine, it has to use a certain amount of pixels here. And when you have the same image, the same photograph, but that it's a high that it's a high. Oh, you know what? I'm relaxing a little bit. They said they'd call it 10 and it's only 9:30. So maybe that wasn't the call. Okay, sorry, my brain. Good. That puts now my brain is back in class. Unless they called a bit earlier. It's too early for it to call to have been the one I wanted. So you would have to have many, many, many more pixels to define this transition, right? And so when you have many more pixels, then you have a better quality image. There's more pixels to do the same transition. So maybe there's, 10 pixels now between the dark orange and the whitest orange. And in an image that's high resolution, you might have 50 or 100 pixels doing this same transition. So later we're going to open the same image in 2 resolutions and you'll see what I mean. I just wanted to begin to get you accustomed to how these images are formed. Now, as you can see, it's made out of squares. So it's very hard to have a straight line in Photoshop. So if you have a straight line, like an image that for any reason should have a diagonal, that's a straight line, it's going to be made out of little squares, right? So consider that this is not, that whenever you want to make straight lines or images that are completely sharp, you need to use some vector tools inside of Photoshop. Vector tools are what Illustrator does, which is making things mathematically versus from an image point of view. So hopefully I can get to show you some vector tools later in this class, which is something I'm always trying to get to. And sometimes we get to and sometimes we don't. But pixels don't show sharp straight lines. This thing, the pixel, the amount of pixels you captured is the key to understanding what photograph is going to work or not to be printed. So if you have a small amount of pixels like this image and you try to print it, it's going to look the equivalent of this, which is like a very fuzzy shape. Okay, it's going to look like a fuzzy set of glasses because you need at least 72 of these pixels to fit in an inch of your photographs. So say that you print a photograph this big, right? So this is about, 2 inches by 4 inches wide and you want a 2 by 4 photograph. Then 1 inch's worth of this pixel right there, like, so this is 4 inches, 1 whole inch has to have 72 pixels inside of it. And this has to have 72 pixels, and this has to have 72 pixels, and this has to have 72 pixels. Okay, so the total amount of pixels you need for this width would be 72 times 4. And I don't have a calculator here. Let me see. Calculator, anyone? 72 times 4. Hold on. Let me open the calculator on the computer because I'm not good at this on my head.
288.
What's that? Say that again.
288.
Okay, thank you. So 72 times 4 is 288. Okay, so that means that we need at least 288 pixels on the widest side for this to print well. Now let's look at this image down here. How many pixels wide did I say this was? If you look down here, what numbers are you reading? The pixels on the bottom left side?
900,
Yeah. So
960.
So do I have, sorry, not 72. Obviously, I'm still, forget everything I just said. My brain was having a moment of absolute blankness. I obviously am still stressed about that phone call. Every inch, completely forget what I said. Every inch has to have 300 pixels. Okay. Jesus, all of you Photoshop veterans should have like blanked me right there because you all know it. You're all laughing like, yeah,
Oh,
Yeah,
I was
I
going
was-
to ask you why you said 72.
Thank you. I was just like, what's my brain doing? So each inch has to have 300 pixels right there. 300 here, 300 here, 300 here, 300 there. So 300 times 4. Okay, now I'm doing this because I've opened my, so 300 times 4 equals, come on. 1200. Okay, so I need a total of 1200 pixels on one side. And here, the max width is 960 pixels. So do I have as many as 1200 pixels in this photo for the width?
No.
So this photo cannot be printed as big as this, which is already really tiny. It can only be printed as something smaller, as something maybe what's 3 times. Yeah,
Well, it says it's 120 pixels per inch, so it's gonna be half that, less than half.
no, actually, that's why I'm trying to have us ignore this little guy
Oh,
under
okay.
PPI. That means right now, it means nothing to us.
Okay.
So I want to explain about that. So the only thing that matters is these two numbers. Okay. So at 960 by 672, you have all the pixels you will have. That number is the one that you need to divide. Now, as you can see by the fact that I'm using a calculator to divide these numbers,
3 by 2.
I actually can't, and these are simple numbers, but when you get to really big numbers, it gets more complicated. I can't really figure this out on the top of my head. If I have a big image with, thousands and thousands of pixels, can I make an image that's 16 by 20? I don't want to have to do that in my brain. So Photoshop gives us a tool to do this really easily, to not have to be bringing out calculators and thinking about 960, 9 whatever, and 9 anything. And it's the tool called image size. So we're going to go ahead and explore that a little bit more, but I just wanted to introduce you to the conversation. And we're going to explore that when we do, after you guys read that handout that I gave you. But right now, what matters is that this thing in between parentheses is just where this picture is set at now. It's set at being 120 pixels per inch. So I would never be able to print this, because if I print it, being that it's set at 120 pixels per inch, it would not have enough resolution and it would show as a very fuzzy, soft picture. This number here, for me to be able to print it correctly, has to say 300. If it's set at 300 pixels per inch or 250 minimum, then when I print this image, it would work. Okay. But at 120, it's not going to give me a good image just because the resolution isn't there. So just these few little numbers here are telling us a lot about this image. Now I want to go straight back to 100% because that's when I can see the image at its best quality. So to do that quickly, instead of having to zoom in and out, let's go ahead and hold down the Control or Command, whichever one that you're on the Mac or on the PC, and then tap the number 1. And by tapping the letter 1, we go straight back to 100%. Okay. If you want to just zoom down by going Control minus Control plus, you can do that. But Control 1 is a great way to go straight down to 100%. And then there's another little shortcut, which is Control 0 or Command 0, that allows the photograph to fill your screen. Now, when the photograph fills your screen, it doesn't care about percentages. It just goes to as wide as your screen is. And sometimes it might look good quality, sometimes not. The fact that it's showing up at bigger than 100% means that it's going to look a little bit fuzzy right now. Okay. And that's fine. That's just because it's giving us more than 100%. The moment it gets bigger than 100%, it starts looking fuzzy. All right. So Control plus, Control minus, Control 1, Control 0, or Command if you're on a Mac are going to be shortcuts that you're going to use all the time. If you want to get good at shortcuts, I'm always going to be calling them out, so you're welcome to just listen. But if you want to also have a visual reminder in the handouts, and I have a whole handout you can download and print to have next to you, which is all of these, the very important shortcuts. Okay. All right. So let's head back to 100%. And let's consider that if you were to want to do anything to this photograph, if you were to want to print this, the first thing you'd have to do is decide if it's straight, right? Now, many times, if this horizon line weren't there, you might not even notice as much that the glasses aren't really straight, but the horizon is a dead giveaway. So what we're going to do first is we're going to do a simple straighten of this image. Now, when you go over here to the left, by the way, I just wanted to make sure that everyone is still in this mode, that we have the same tools available. And if you're seeing something here very different than me, then let me know. We need to change your workspace. But if you were here the last 2 classes, then you should be seeing the same things I'm seeing. But what we're using is the photography workspace. Okay.
What are
all
we
right.
supposed to be seeing on the right column? What are we, where do we call that up?
This is the workspace. So over
Oh.
here at the
Oh,
very,
okay.
very top, you click
Got it.
on this
Yeah.
little icon there and you get the different workspaces. Okay. So since we opened up this computer for this version of Photoshop for the first time, we might be seeing different things. And we have some tools here that are not the ones that are for photography. So we're going to go ahead and click on this icon that looks like a little square rectangle next to the little mini search engine, and head over to photography. And that's going to give us a set of tools that we want everyone in today's class to have. And then what we had done, see, since it's the first time we opened 2021, it's giving me all these like things that it's trying to teach me. So I'm going to say, okay. And we're gonna go ahead and get rid of this little box that has libraries and adjustments as a panel. This is what we did last time, but again, we have to do it again because we just moved up version. We'll have to redo this one time. We won't need to do it up again. So go to this tiny little hamburger icon. This is what these things are called, which on the very right of each panel, set of panels tools, see how you have that little icon? When you click on that, you get many more options. And in this case, I just want to close this entire tab group, okay? To get rid of the whole thing. And so now I'm going to just have histogram, the navigator on top, and the layers, the channels, and the paths underneath to give us more space to operate. Any questions about that? All right. So now on the left side over here, okay, we're going to go to the 4th tool down, or the shortcut to grab the cropping tool is the C on your keyboard. And if you want to learn shortcuts, remember that when you hover over the tool, it'll give you a little tooltip, but it'll call you the name, and then it'll give you something in the parentheses. And that C is the key that you click on your keyboard to quickly get to the cropping tool. So I'm going to do that. Instead of clicking on it, I'm going to hit C on my keyboard. And there you go. See how it went to my cropping tool without having to touch it? And when I get to my cropping tool, I get these little kind of photo corners surrounding my image. Well, let's go ahead, and there's a couple different ways to straighten, but there's a straighten tool in here that's really, really cool. So I want us to use the straighten tool versus trying to shift it around visually. This straighten tool over here is a little level, you know, like the carpenter's levels. So just go ahead and click on it one time, and it gets darker. It's slightly darker. It's hard to tell, but now that straighten tool has been turned on. So now if I go into the photograph, the little red dot that you're seeing is me trying to show you my tool better, but you don't have a red dot. But what you do have is this plus sign, and you have a little icon of a carpenter's tool. What matters here is the crux of that plus sign. That's where you're going to want to put your mouse, right on the edge of the horizon. So see how my plus sign, I'm going to click on it right here on one end of the horizon. And then, okay, I need to, sorry, it's a click and drag, not a click. I need to turn it on again so that I get the levels. You're going to click here and then hold your mouse down and see how a line pulls out, and drag it along the line of the horizon to the last part of the horizon that you can see. And when you get there, you let go of your mouse. And then the computer, Photoshop, straightens it to make that horizon line be straight.
Cool.
So now I'm gonna hit escape to try that again, because it might have worked or not for you guys. So hit the escape, is the escape top left key on your keyboard. Okay, so pick up hit the escape to start all over again, pick up your straighten tool, and maybe you can do it from this side now. So you find the center, click and drag, and then bring your mouse all the way here. And don't let go until that line matches with the line of the horizon, and then let go of your mouse. And once you let go of your mouse, Photoshop does the little shift to straighten it. Okay. Now, here's the thing, in order to straighten it, some stuff has to be cropped out now, because by straightening it, you're left with, you know, leftovers of your photograph. And that would be this. So you lose a bit of that table and a little bit of that sky, and you lose a bit of this table and a bit of that sky over there. But that's better than having an obviously crooked photograph. So if this crops out something truly crucial for you, like you had someone's face and now you see half, you know, you're beginning to cut into the eye, well, then you have to find a different way to expand the edges or stuff. But in this image, there's nothing crucial that's lost. So this works fine. So now I need to say, okay, yeah, this is a good crop. I'm happy with it. So to move into that, there's a couple of things I want to show you here that are pretty crucial. And the first one is whether you want to delete the cropped pixels or not. Meaning, do I really want to get rid of all this stuff that's falling out now? See this piece of table, this piece of sky. Do I want to get rid of it forever? Or do I think that there's a chance I might still want to use it someday, right? So if I'm sure that I never, ever want to use this little bit of sky again for any reason, or that I'll never want to recover that bit of straw or that little whatever, then I can leave this turned on. It's the default setting is to have it be turned on. I find that it's a bit dangerous because sometimes you want to crop something, and then after you crop, you decide you really want to go ahead and use that again, and then it's gone forever. Okay, so my default setting usually is to not delete it. But this time I truly will have never any use for these little bits and pieces. So I'm happy leaving the delete crop checked. You guys just need to make sure you understand the difference. So let's leave it off. And then you have to either say yes with a check mark or no, I want to start again. So hitting no is the equivalent to the escape that I have you guys hit escape. So that would be the no. A yes, instead of going all over here to click on the checkbox, I just always hit the return or enter key on my keyboard. And that's the same thing as clicking on that. So after if I'm sure I like it, I'm going to hit the return or enter key. It's return on a Mac, enter on a PC. And that's the equivalent to having checked that little checkbox. And there you go. My photograph has now been cropped. I have those pixels are completely gone. Now, the problem here is that the word Shutterstock now is crooked because it was a watermark, but that's not important at all. I'm just showing you that there might be something you need to check always when you're doing these things, that you haven't messed up something else. All right, so we're left with this image that's now straight. Now, the tools that I'm trying to teach you today are about how to navigate in and out of making a photograph work. And say that we just made a crop. That's horrible. That's bad. We didn't straighten it correctly. We really didn't want this to happen. We didn't want to delete the pixels. Well, there's always you can always undo stuff. And together with the control zoom plus minus that I taught you earlier, even more important than that is always to know the shortcut to undo. So what we're going to do is we're going to undo this that we just did by hitting the control or command for the Mac and the letter Z. And the other day, for someone it wasn't working and they kept pressing the C. So the Z for zebra. And I was just thinking that I have to make sure that I explain that. So control or command Z. So if you're on VDI, it's a PC. So it's control, hold down the control key again, and then quickly tap the letter Z one time. And there we go, back to having our crooked photograph, just like we had it at the beginning. We have just undone one step. Now we're going to attempt that crop one more time, but we're going to do it a different way this time. So we need our same crop tool in case you've changed tools or not. So go and click on it one more time to get the little handles again, just to start from 0 again. Click on the letter C for crop. And now this time we're gonna turn off the delete crop pixels. So I'm gonna go ahead and unclick that. So now that the pixels will not be cropped away, because I'm gonna say that I actually want to keep all that stuff that's around when I straighten it, okay? So make sure to turn that off. And now look at my mouse. I don't go to straighten. I'm gonna have this mouse that does two different things when it's inside and when it's outside of the black. When it's inside of the image, it's showing me more of the image of the crop tool. When it's outside, it's showing me a double-headed arrow. This double-headed arrow is the one that I want. So I need to be outside to straighten an image, not inside, but outside. And so once I'm in here, I can click and drag to the right or to the left and move it myself willy-nilly. So if you don't have an obvious straight line like a horizon, you might need to just do this yourself. So when you start, and I'm just not letting go of my mouse, I'm just going up and down with my mouse. And as I move it, this grid line is popping up, trying to help me find a straight line. So in this case, I'm going to try to match it as best as I can. So I'm forcefully moving it up and down a lot so you guys see. But now I'm actually going to try to find the way that line of the horizon matches the line in the grid. And that there seems to be about right. So I let go of my mouse. And there you go. So now that is my eyeballing it, kind of straightening, which, you know, if you're in a photograph of mountains or a photograph of anything that doesn't have a horizon line, many times you're going to have to eyeball it this way to straighten something rather than have a line to drag across. Does that make sense? Any questions? No.
Could you do the first example again where you drug the line across?
Mm-hmm. Actually, give me a second. Let me finish with this example, and then I'll run one time through the straighten again.
Okay.
So this one right now, all we had to do is keep our mouse held down and move our mouse up and down until we found it seemed that grid kind of matched what we thought was right. And then you let go of your mouse. Okay. All right. So what's going to happen at this point, because I did not say to delete this crop pixels, at this point, I said keep them. Okay. So let's go ahead and say okay to this, which again, how did I say that you had to say okay to this? What was the
Click
key?
the check.
Either click the check or hit return and enter. Okay, so this time I'm going to click the check mark. All right, so this time what happened is different than before, in the sense that I have not lost that stuff, but I'm not seeing it. So what do you mean I didn't lose that stuff? Well, let me show you. Let's shift to the top tool again. Anyone remember what the shortcut for this move tool is? This tool at the very top is the move tool. And when I click on it and hold, it shows me that little V over there. So whenever I say the V or move tool, V for move, that's the key I would use. So I'm going to head over to the move tool, and I'm going to put my mouse over here in the middle, any part of this image, and I'm going to click and drag. And look at that. I still have those crooked lines. See that? Remember how last week we moved some stuff around in layers? We had the eagle, we had the desert, and they were kind of floating. So this is the transparency. And the image did not get cropped, so it's straightened out. But out there in the blackness, we still have the image parts and pieces that we had cropped out. That's the difference between deleting the crop pixels or not. Last time, when we did it the other way, we literally had nothing left. It got rid of those pixels, but this time it kept the pixels here. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
right. So now here's what we're gonna do. We're going to put this back as best as you can. It's reacting very slowly to me right now. I don't know if it's the new version of Photoshop or today's, but anyway. Put it back to where you can't see. And so we're just clicking and dragging around until you can't see any transparent pixels again. So we're filling the screen with our image, okay? So you shouldn't see any lines of transparent pixels anywhere. And what happened this time is that the image turned into a layer. I had forgotten to point this out to you, but over here, before we performed our crop, it said background down here. And because we cropped and kept the pixels, those little bits that we cropped have to hang out outside of this. Imagine this is a little window that we're looking through, and everything behind the black is still there. It's just hidden from us, okay? But this is a little hole through which we're seeing the image we're keeping. And to do that, it had to turn into a layer. So now we have this as a layer. All right, now I want to do this one more time, but instead of using the Control Z, because we've been moving things around, right? So if I now do Control Z, it's going to undo a move, undo a move, undo a move, undo a move. We don't have recently cropped as our last action. We just moved things around as our last action. So I could either hold down the Control and tap Z a whole bunch of times, or I can use another of the most crucial tools Photoshop has, which is called the history. So I want to go back to the unstraightened version. And the way to get to history, this little icon right there, that's like a backwards in time arrow kind of thing. If I hover over it, that's history. Remember, if that you ever want to use any of these tools and you don't remember where they are, as long as you remember the word history, every single thing that's available here will be visible as a list of words, which many of us are better, you know, we can see the word history, even if I remember its icon. Go to Window and look for the word history. So then you click on the word history and there it pops up for you. Okay, so this is for when you forget where an icon might be or not. You just always under the word window, you will find all of the different panels and tools available. So history, when you click on it, it pops open. If you click on it, it closes again. So this is an on and off kind of situation. And so when I pop it open right now, I'll see that the last thing I did was move. The thing I did before that was crop, and the one thing I did before that is open. So it's a couple of different steps. So I want to move back in history. And once I've done a lot, this history gets pretty long. You're gonna have 50 little icons or items here, and move up and down your history. Like you can actually take back those words you said that you can't do in real life. You can certainly take back that action you did in Photoshop. So you go back in time, in history, and we're going to click right now on the word crop. And when you go to the word crop, well, that was only one step behind. The crop is still happening. So if I want to go before my crop, I need to go one above that thing that I want to undo. So if I want to undo my crop, I have to go one above, which in this case is just open. And when I go to open, there's my uncropped image again. But here's the good news, that as long as I don't do anything else, I can still go back and go up in time again and go, no, I was happy with it. And so I'm going to go back here. So now I'm backwards and forwards on all of the actions that I've done. And I can say, no, I want to go all the way back to the beginning, or no, I want to finish in this place where I moved it. So I have more control over my back and forth than you do when you just do undo, okay? Where you don't know what's coming next, what's the next undo that's happening. Here you can see what action you're doing or undoing. All right, so let's head back one last time to open. We do want to perform this one last time, and this time we're going to do one last thing that's pretty cool that the crop can do. And so make sure first to go all the way to open. And then you can turn this off because we don't need it anymore. And now let's go one last time to the crop tool. Okay. And now this time with the crop tool, I'm going to show you one more time how to use the straighten because for out of Ken's request, but then I'm going to show you something else. So let's head over to the word straighten one more time. Turn the straighten little icon on. And then here, all you do is you draw a line, click and hold your mouse. And then once you see that kind of, the line appear, if you were to drop it off here, the whole thing would straighten as if that was the horizon. So you need to have something that you clearly know is the right line. So even this horizon is a bit fat. So if you started on the top of it, you need to end up on the top of it. And when you have your line where you want, you let go of your mouse and that performs the crop. Now, any questions about the straighten before I move on? Ken, did it work this time for you, Ken?
Oh yeah, I didn't realize I had to stay on the
Yeah.
horizon line as opposed to
Yeah.
like keeping it straight on the picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, guys. So now what we're going to do this time is we're going to see, I don't want to lose all those corners. I really don't. And I understand that I kind of have to because I wanted to straighten it, but I really want to see the very edge of this and the very edge of that straw. Can I do that? Well, yes, there's a way to do that. So let's go ahead and first of all, I'm going to have to grab these corners now to go different than whatever it is that Photoshop set up, because this is, I can either go from the sides to make it bigger or smaller. Just grab the sides and move it a little bit, and I'm moving the cropping in. So I'm suddenly going to choose to have only the 3 glasses, right? So I can do that. Oh, it's so slow. It's driving me crazy. It's jumping around. Okay, so I'm going to do that and say I have this, and once I let go, see, it just doesn't drive me bonkers. Wow. I'm hoping that this is just a bad oh goodness, I didn't know Richard was in the waiting room. I hope he hasn't been waiting for too long. Okay, so now see how all the rest of the stuff is going gray? So I'm changing what I'm going to crop by moving these little handles myself. Now, if I want to move tall or width, I go to the sides, but if I want to move both at the same time, I can go to the top here and I can use this to move it height and width. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I don't want to lose any of this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the very edges of this image. Oh my God. Is it happening to you guys like this too? Very jumpy? I don't know if it's because we're on Zoom, but it's not even. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and try to put this in the very corners. It's not. I'm going to turn the spotlight off. It's one less thing to worry about. I don't know if that helps. Let me see if that helps a bit. So I wasn't trying to get all of this. I was just trying to get back to having, it's not letting me. It's jumped so much I can't. Wow. Just trying to get back on my image, but I don't want to invent all that screen. It's not, and so I just wanted to be able to, wow. This is crazy. I'm just trying to go around the edges, but I can't get it to stay. This is not Photoshop, guys. This tool is very simple to use. Photoshop normally doesn't do this. I think it's because my computer is stretching to, I don't know. So my goal, if you guys can accomplish it, and I can't seem to, is to be able to just capture all of the image, which if you guys are running crazy with it, you might think it's you doing it wrong, but it's not. Trust me, I can't seem to be it either.
Diana, when I go to the middle flat bar on the bottom of the frame and
Mhm.
just try to just take the crop up a little bit, it moves the whole thing rather than just the bottom of the composition.
Yeah, the whole thing kind of moves around until you get the edges going, but it's, my goal was to get to what I just did,
Mhm.
but it took me tears. Well, you don't see them, but in my soul, I'm crying. That is weird. So if it's happening to you too, I don't know if it's a problem with Photoshop or right now, or the fact that we're on Zoom and I'm sharing my screen. But normally when we're done with this class and you open up Photoshop, try the crop again and see if the tool's still doing weird stuff. Normally it should be just a simple move. So this was my goal. I want to keep every little inch of my photograph, okay? But I want to have the horizon straight. So see how my horizon is straight now? But if I do this, if I say okay to this, then this is gonna be transparent and transparent and transparent. Does that make sense? If I
Yeah.
now say go, okay. So here is where we're gonna see the first time that we see the magic of Photoshop. It's a tool that Photoshop has in many, it's a capacity, not a tool, that Photoshop has in many of its tools, which is called content aware. And sometimes it does an amazing job of content aware, and sometimes not so much, depending on the image. So what I want it to do is up here at the top, we're going to not, so make sure to keep this content, the delete crop pixels off. We're not going to delete any pixels, but we do want to turn on content aware. As we turn on content aware, what content aware, I mean, when you hover over it for a second, that gives you a little tool tip. Let me see if I can bring the tool. Content aware fill areas outside the original image. So by turning this on, what we're saying to Photoshop is go ahead and fill in all these little holes and spaces that I've made. And notice that in my case, I had a bigger selection made, but it jumped it in a little bit more. I was going to say that it's going to have a couple of areas that are going to be problem areas. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger again. The sky is going to be easy for Photoshop to fill. What might be a little bit harder for Photoshop to know what to do is here, where it has an edge of a table with a bit of glass and those lines. See what I mean? I'm going to make it a teensy bit bigger. Now, it probably would do a very good job of filling in the lines of the table because it would know to continue that. What I'm not sure what it's going to do is around this is it doesn't know. Photoshop doesn't know that this is the bottom of a glass, that this is a straw. It just sees pixels and it tries to imitate the pixels that are nearest. So is it going to try to imitate another glass bottom, or is it going to know to fill with a wooden table? I don't know. Each time you perform a content aware, Photoshop will do it to the best of its ability, and it might do it differently one time than another. You know what I mean? So it might do it differently for you than for me, because you will have made your line move to a, like your crop is not going to be identical to mine, especially not, you know, so each time we say go, one of us will at the end have a different result. So let's give it a try. So now I want to get this image to be straight, but I don't want to lose that much of around it. So I turn on the content aware, and now let's go see what it does. This is Photoshop magic. We'll say, go for it. And let's see what Photoshop does when it has to calculate it. Progress and fill. So what happened? What worked and what didn't work?
So mine has still a little stripe of the gray and white squares in the middle of the sky and at the bottom.
Yeah, mine does too.
After saying go and fill, it still
Uh-huh.
left some stripes. That's
Uh-huh.
interesting. I'm going to have you share. In my case, the computer went ahead and filled in nicely as I projected, or sky table, but then it kind of messed up down here. I don't know if you can see, but it didn't know what to do with that because all it can do is imitate pixels. And so it gave me a couple more bottoms of glass. Okay. Now, you never know what will or won't work with content aware. I mean, you begin to know enough how Photoshop works that I already figured that this is probably what it was going to do down here. But other times, like if you have like a photograph of a landscape with mountains and little houses sprinkled across the mountains, it can imitate that and bring some other of the little houses. It does a pretty good job, but something as detailed as this, it couldn't handle. But that's fine because now we can go and crop this out, which it would have been cropped out anyway. But some of you mentioned that you still have pixels that are empty. That I'm surprised about because content aware does tend to have the one thing, which is it fills up. So do you want to share your screen to show me?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Anything else different happened out there? Now it's
I had the same thing, only
You
even.
see
worse.
mine?
down here. Yeah, I'm seeing that. So this is where it obviously didn't know what to do. And in my case, it figured, I'll just replace the glass. And in yours, it went, no, clearly I shouldn't replace the glass. Maybe I'll just leave it empty. This is actually easier to correct than mine, because here you can just copy a little bit more of this table, which is actually easy to do in Photoshop and fill it in yourself. Versus mine, where it actually invented glass is harder to fix. Now the reason yours result is different than mine also is because see how you made a different crop, you made a crop where you cut out a lot of sky and stuff like that. And so, as I said, each one of our crops is going to result in something different. This is actually not hard to fix. With a tool, I'm going to go ahead and I wasn't going to show it in this one here, but I can. I'll show it to you in this tool. Go ahead and head over here to the, you see two little Band-Aid looking tools here on the left.
Yeah.
Go and choose the top little Band-Aid, and it's the tool that has like, it's a Band-Aid with a few little dots. Can you go choose that? It's the healing tool, the spot healing tool. Yeah, that one. Okay, so if you have like a streak or a line that's missing something, that tool is going to be very useful. So click over there and drag it down. Yeah, and usually I try to have it be not much bigger than
Whoa.
the
Amazing.
yeah, and it messed the straws up a teensy bit, but careful, don't touch the glass. Do that now, but don't touch the glass. Like go down, yeah, and don't touch the glass. And then let's see what it does. It still might put in some glass in there, but let's see. And let go. Look at that.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
So
Huh?
it actually creates image where there wasn't image before.
Yeah. Which is, this is that just happened is also the content aware tool in a more controllable way, one where you with your mouse use it. Okay.
That is far out.
So I'll show everyone another place where we can use that tool, but I thought this was a good place
That's
to
very cool.
just show it.
So
Okay.
can I hit stop share now?
Yeah. I'll stop the
Beautiful.
share.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So anyone else who had like a little streak like that, go ahead and give that a try. We're going to work with that tool a bit more, but that's a quick way to see it happen. In my case, though, it won't work to erase what's wrong. So
Yeah, how
now-
do you adjust the size of the spot? I have a gigantic spot.
yeah, so someone has a radio and a dog on barking. So if you happen to have a dog barking in your house, we're hearing it. Can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. All right. So when we go grab this selection tool, I want to have a different photo. Not a lot of us have things to fix with that tool. So I'm going to show it to you in another tool, but just quickly, when you pull this tool out, your circle of that shape of that tool is really big or really small. You can go over, everyone go to this tool, click on this tool, which is the spot healing tool. It's a spot healing brush tool. And if you look at the name spot healing brush, the word brush has one giveaway, and look what it's doing there. See how it's erasing by
Diana, are
clicking.
you sharing your screen?
Oh, Thank you, Leland. Y'all, whenever someone else shares and I stop sharing, you have to, as he did, he's a veteran of my classes, remind me to share. So what I was saying is that when you head over to a tool, if it says the word brush in it somewhere, which in this case it does, Spot Healing Brush Tool, anything that's a brush, and there's quite a few here that are called brushes of one kind of another, you can modify the size of your tool. And you modify the size of your tool, making it bigger or smaller by heading over to the keyboard. There's a couple of different ways to do it, but the easy one to show you right now. So go to the keyboard and look for the brackets. The bracket keys are to the right of the letter P. So look at your letter P, and to the right of letter P, you see the open bracket and close brackets. Do you see them?
Yes.
Okay. So when you click on the brackets and you click, 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 each time you click, you can make one, the right side bracket, you make it bigger. And when you, the small size bracket, you
Wow.
make it smaller. So then you get, when you get to the point that your bracket is really small, so if you go really small with your bracket, it's a tiny little circle. So you can barely see, I don't know if you guys even see it. And then as I keep going even smaller, 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 then it turns into this little crosshairs because it can't show you a circle small enough. So you get this little like crosshairs. That's when it's a really small brush. And then you move the other one to the right, and then you get the bigger circle. Okay, so that's how you get a bigger or a small one. Now, I don't have anything this tool can work with here myself. Maybe I can try to fix this, but for the most part, I'll have to go to a different tool to fix this problem. But let me see if I can do something here. That kind of figured out that I didn't want the second line, but you're kind of using Photoshop to guess at something. It's better than before, but it's still not correct. So in order to fix this, we're going to need other tools that I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to show you with this image. I'm going to show you with a different image. So anyway, now you've seen the good and the bad of the crop tool, your good and bad of all of the different choices, and the first glance at content aware. Now, one thing I do want to remind you is that if you go back to the crop tool again, so I'll click on the crop tool one more time. Even if it's this image or another image, say that you open another image and you go back to the crop tool. And this is important, not just for the crop tool, for any tool in Photoshop, remains at the settings that you last used it. So say that I'm trying to crop a different image and I go to the crop tool. Well, it'll be set at the same things that I just used, meaning it will not delete the crop pixels and it will choose to fill in with content aware. And this might not be what you want to do the next time you crop. So each time you go to a tool, you have to look up in the toolbar and change the settings to match what you want to do this time. Okay, so it's just a warning. It starts where you left it the last time you used the tool. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if the next time you crop, you don't want to use content aware, you would have to turn that off. You would turn this on, and there's a couple of things, but I'm going to leave it at that with that image. All right. So now let's go ahead, and when we're done with doing something, I'm going to leave this one that way. I don't have yet the level to show you. I don't have yet how to, we're going to learn how to do the stamp tool and the clone tool, and that will help us get rid of this. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to save this file, because I want to show you where to save files, especially if you're on VDI, files that we use in class. For those of you who are at home, if you just want to save this photo as is, then you'll lose your original version, right? Because you overwrite, by just saving this file with its name, you overwrite the original one. And so if you want to keep the original one to work on it again, and then the one that you just were working on, which is usually what you want to do in Photoshop, you don't want to save over your original, because what if you messed it up? Then when you try to go and fix this again, I won't have a version of a glass where my glass doesn't have this double bottom. I want to be able to say, well, I have a version of this glass where I still have a clean bottom, right? So in Photoshop, if you're fixing someone's portrait or you're fixing some background, some mountains, landscape, you want to keep your original untouched and a version, which is your layered version where you're fixing things. So the first thing you should be doing is either already be working on a copy of the image that you might have created earlier, or you want to do a save as to keep your original untouched and make this be a new file. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do file save as. File save as. This is always going to come up now. And let me explain these choices. Save to the cloud is only going to be available for people who own their own iCloud subscriptions. If you save to the cloud, this document is going to go be saved in the Photoshop or in the Creative Cloud, meaning it's not going to be in your computer. It's going to be up in the library, the Creative Cloud space that you are kind of buying. I think you get 20 gigabytes or something like that of space for free. Now, the negative is it's not in your computer. If you don't have an internet connection, you can't access your photo. So say that you take your computer just, camping, you won't be able to access that photo. The positive is that say that at home you work with one computer and at work you work with another one, and you did this at home. Well, then you can go to work with your other computer, open it up from the cloud and keep working on it because it's in the internet and you can access it from anywhere that you have the internet. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we're not going to use the cloud. We're going to save to our own computer. So we're going to ignore that. And we're going to save on your computer. So we're all going to click on save your computer. Now, remember that for people who are at home, this is truly your computer. So you can go over here to the left and choose wherever on your computer you want to save it, probably in the same folder that it came from. But for those of us on VDI, we can't save it in the same folder it came from because that's where we've got our raw images. So I'm going to guide you. We're going to go over here on the left to the Google Drive. So again, I don't know, for Mac people and PC people on their own homes, you choose where you want to put your stuff. But for VDI, we go to Google Drive. And now the place for you to save your files is under something called My Drive, which is your drive. So Bonnie's drive, Becky's drive, Ken's drive, not Deanna's drive. Shared drives is My Drive, the one you took things from. My Drive is your space. So double click on My Drive. And then in here, you might or not have a lot of stuff. So in my case, I made a folder. These you have to make yourself. It's stuff that's in your Pipeline Google Drive. Okay, so you can let it be saved here loosely, or you can make yourself a new folder. Go over here to this little word, new folder. Okay. And call it my Photoshop work or class files and stuff like that. So I already created one myself. Whoops. I already created one myself for me. So I'm going to say save on your computer. My Drive. And I'm going to save it here in the Photoshop, my class files, spring 2021 that I've already made. So that's, you make your own. And so now you have to double click to get in there. And we're going to save some stuff in here. Mine already has stuff. Now you can change your name to the file or not. You can call it Straighten Cocktails Content Aware or Crop Tool, or, so like this one can be called Dash Crop Tool, whatever it is that you want to later remember what you did with this one. Okay. And then we'll say save. So once you try to save an image, you're going to get this Photoshop format options. This one, what it's telling you is, should I make this image be available to be open in other versions of Photoshop. And yes, you always want your Photoshop file to be as openable as possible. So you did by default tend to always leave this on. If you're at home and you have your own version, you can also say don't show again, but I always leave it on because we want to. But if it's your version already, you always want to say yes to this. So you might as well say don't show again and then not have to see it. But otherwise, we're always going to say okay to this one. And now we have something very new here, because before we had the Straighten Cocktails .jpg, JPG. And now instead we have Straighten Cocktails. I added something to the name just to show clearly to you that it was our new one, but now it says .psd, because this became a layered file. Even though we don't have many layers like last time, just the fact that there's stuff hiding on the sides, just the fact that we did that crop with content aware made this file now be layered. So as a layered file, you cannot have a JPEG anymore. JPEG files are only flat one layer files. They are never layered files. And you should never save as a JPEG or JPG. After the initial photo that comes out of the camera that comes as a JPEG, you should never save as a JPEG again, ever, unless you're ready to send that photo, for example, to print or to the internet or to the web. So JPEG is going to be the way it comes from the camera and the way you finish the file. But in between all the times that you're still working on it, changing it, making it better or worse, you're going to want to always have a PSD, which is the working layered file with all of your stuff that's going on. And there's never any reason to get rid of a PSD, to lose all that work, those changes, unless you are ready to print, in which case you make a JPEG, but you keep your layered file and you add a new JPEG ready for print. We're going to be going over that later, of how to create that final JPEG ready for print and stuff. I just can't teach you everything the first day. So for now, just trust me. We're going to leave this as a PSD. Now, just to make sure, did everyone go over to the chat and sign in and let me know that you were here?
Yep.
In case someone hasn't done that yet, or in case you didn't see the message, didn't hear me say that. I know a couple of people added themselves to the class or showed up a little bit later. So I just wanted to let you know that we're going to go an extra 15 minutes today in every class to kind of make up for last week's missed connection. And if you can't stay, then you always have the recordings available. You find some good time in between class to go and watch those last 15 minutes. And the next thing I was going to say is that today we're going to kind of keep going, because I need to, as long as that call that came in at 9:30 wasn't the right one, I need to answer a phone call that I'm waiting for that could happen anytime. And so what I'm going to do is when that phone call comes in, that's when I'm going to give you a break. So at some point you might hear me go, oh, okay, guys, there's my phone call. And I'm just going to kind of mute myself and mute the video, and everyone go take a 15-minute break while I have that phone call. So we're going to keep going, and hopefully the call comes in at a time that makes sense for the break. So if in between you get to a place where you feel like you need a break, just let me know. And if the call isn't coming in by because it's 10:30, normally I would give you a break right now, but if I do that, I don't want to then have to break again. So let's go on a little bit longer, okay, and see if we can coincide the call with the break. If you need to go to the bathroom or do something, stand up still, please go ahead and do it, and let me know when you come back. I'll help you catch up for a second. Okay. So now that we've finished this image, let's go ahead and close it. So one good way to close this image is at the very end of the name here. You'll see a little X, and you click on that and you get rid of it. Many times I leave the images that I'm working on open, but the Zoom is so slow right now that because then I would go back and forth and show you other stuff, but I don't want to keep open stuff running. So here we go. The image, once it's closed, it takes me back to that beginning open image, but now under recent, we have a couple of images here, and it's the two versions that I just opened. It's the original one, which I had told you was a JPEG, but I hadn't really made a point of showing you that, and it's called straightedcocktails.jpg. And it reminded, and if I hover over it, it tells me where that image is. See how it says Photoshop? I can't move my mouse. It says Photoshop shared drive, class, straighten it up. And then when I hover over this one, it tells me that this is the new one and that it's in my class files, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so it kind of shows you where it is. This one's the shared drives one, the one that we first opened. And this one is the one that's in my drive now. And it's the PSD.
But I have a question. How do you delete images in that saved folder if you just want to clean house a little bit?
I don't know. Actually, it's not really saved. It's just showing you where they are because people tend to need to work on the same thing again and again. There must be a way to clear your recents, but I don't know of a way to clear your recents. Sorry. I've never thought of the need to clear my recents. So one thing that I will look forward to you researching and telling us all about, John, next week. All right. So now let's go open another file. God, I feel like I need to give you guys a break. Can we do just a really short, like, 5 minutes? Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. So let's just go and run in and out, straighten your legs, shake, shake, shake. And let's be back at 10:38. Okay, we'll do a 5-minute break. Okay, guys, that was a short 5 minutes, but hopefully it let people get the blood flowing again for a little bit. I'm noticing that ever since I put the webcam on this side, it points towards the window and it makes my face appear like a dark spot, but I don't know. I have to move the webcam again, but for now, that's where it is. It's not like you came here to see my beautiful face, so that's okay.
Actually doesn't look any very contrasty at all.
Oh, it doesn't?
On
Oh,
our-
okay.
Not so.
I have this light in front of me that I'm trying to shine on my face to have it help, but yeah. I noticed that if I, depending on where I stand, you see more of it or more of me. There, now that's more of me, but then I'd have to be like in front of the camera. Okay. Thanks for saying that, John. And I know you know what things look like when they work. All right.
Deanna, I have a question.
Yes, Harry?
1 hour ago, I updated that Photoshop, that new one.
Yeah.
What happened that Photoshop 2021, so many issues, actually they removed. Some, I don't know. I got from the friend, just I emailed to him and they said they removed this.
I've heard that Photoshop 2021 is not that stable, that it's having some issues. So I'm surprised that I was surprised today to discover that Photoshop got opened up. Like I was not hoping that they'd shifted it. That's not my favorite thing that happened, obviously. So I don't know what to say. I am not upgrading mine in my computer until they give me the go ahead that Photoshop 2021 is stable. I've heard it having issues, and my experience just today, I don't know if it's because of Zoom, but that was a very, very slow moving crop tool. So
I wasn't having trouble with it. I've had 21 installed and I've been using it daily and I haven't
Okay.
Seen a
All right.
problem.
So, and today, now that you're on Zoom, well,
No,
you're
I'm
using,
on Zoom. I'm not having any problem, right?
You're not on VDI, you're in your
No.
own version, yeah. So, okay, well, that's good to know that you're not having problems with it. I don't know. Don't know what to say, Harry. So you lost access to your 2020 is what you're saying, and you want it back? Your sound is off. Your microphone, Harry, I can't hear you. Sound, I can't hear you. I turned everyone's sound off during break so that you could all like go and make noise without, so if you were saying something, I wasn't able to hear you, Harry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Mhm.
So it just about 1 hour ago, I updated it.
Oh, wow.
And then 2021 is gone.
All that time to download.
Yes, gone. So,
Well, it's up and running now. You have it running.
yeah, I don't have problem.
Okay, that's good. All right, so let's head back to any questions about what we just did before we open another image? Nope. Okay, so let's head back to Bridge. Okay, so if you were still in Photoshop in this mode here, then we're gonna head over down here in our tab to Bridge. And now I have zoomed in when I was showing this file before I zoomed in. So I have to scroll more up and down. But remember, you can either prefer to go down here and see things smaller, you can see them bigger. Bonnie had mentioned how you can see things by file name. There's many other ways to use Bridge. I'm kind of using the basic essentials setup right now because we're using it at a very essential level. So anyway, this scroll bar here will allow you to go up and down. All right, so now let's go ahead and I want to show you over here. But let's go back to the straighten. We're not going to open it again, but I want to go to this image. So select it, just a single click selection. Because now that we've been in this image and we've seen something more about the amount of pixels and stuff, I wanted to show you over here. It says same thing before, nothing has changed. But remember that I had shown you the total amount of numbers, 960, the pixels, 960 by 672. And then this is the file size, the size of that file, the resulting file. But this does or doesn't relate to how big the file is, depending on how much it's been compressed. So this number isn't really important right now. The one that does matter, remember that we said 120 PPI, and I said, well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Just wanted to show you something. 102 PPI means pixels per inch. And remember when I said that the pixels per inch means that in each inch you need to have 300 if you want to print it. So this image is set at 120 pixels per inch. So just that number, 120 PPI, anything that's under 300 gives you the indication that it's not ready for print. But then it's weird because if you keep looking down at this information that's here, let me put the spot, I'm going to put the little, I think the spotlight button red thing does help when I'm in this situation. So then put it on, there we go. Here's my mouse. So when you start looking down here, it gives you, this is like a little, summary of a bunch of stuff that's here. And it gives you the file name. It tells you it's a JPEG and it tells you when it was shot and when it was modified. And then gives you the file size again, the pixels again. But then it says dimensions 960 by 662. And then it says dimensions in inches, 8 by 5.5, right? So resolution 120 PPI. So if you read this without understanding what the numbers mean, then you might think that this image is, oh, I can get an 8 by 5.5 inch image out of this, right? Almost like legal letter-sized paper. So be careful with that dimension in inches, because all that means is that if right now all these pixels were divided by 120, you'd get 8 inches out of it. But you would never be able to print that file because it doesn't have enough resolution to give you a good photograph. Does that make sense? So really what matters isn't the dimensions in inches, but the PPI. If it's lower than 300, or let's say generously lower than 250, then you just know it's not ready to print. And if you do want to print it, it won't be that size. You need to, inside of Photoshop, invert this set of numbers. And that's what I'm going to teach you next time we meet. But you need to open up and say, make this be 300 PPI. And that's going to force this down to about 3 inches or so, whatever it is that the calculation turns out into. So this number is dependent on this. They depend on each other tremendously. And when you change this one, that changes. When you change this one, this changes. Okay. But you can do that easily inside of Photoshop. That doesn't mean you can't print it. It just means you have to first change this to 300 before you can print it, but you're going to be left with a much smaller picture than what this is saying. Okay. So we'll put that into practice later, but just so you know, to usually don't believe the dimensions in inches unless the resolution is correct. Okay. Now we're going to head over up a little bit to the H for high pass. H. So I'm going to head all the way up. And we're going to go over here to this, not this one. Where's this one? High pass photo. Okay, now, once again, before we open it, I want you to begin this to understand the metadata. So if we look at the metadata, the other one didn't tell us what camera, it just didn't have information. This one does have camera information of what exposure and stuff like that with regards to what, oh, someone's coming in, admit. All right. So this one here tells us that it's 1277 on a side by 850. So already it's got more pixels than the one we were just working on, right? But still, it's not a ton of pixels, but it is more. Yet the number here is smaller. It says 72 PPI. So when I go look down here at this information, even though we know effectively that, yes, there's more pixels in there, but not that many more. I mean, the other one had 900 by 600. So yeah, it's got some more pixels, but suddenly the dimensions in inches are telling me, whoa, I can get a 17 by 12 image out of that, which is way bigger than the other one. Remember? For not that many more pixels, they're telling me that I can get a way bigger image. And that's only there because my resolution has been lowered to 72, meaning if I only put 72 inches pixels in an inch, well, I can get something that big, but it'll be even fuzzier and even worse quality than the other one was at 122. So again, these numbers, you have to ignore the dimension in inches until you get this at the right place to print. Now, if this image is going to go to anything that's on screen, that's a different question. There's more than enough pixels for this image to be a nice photograph for a screen. So for a website, for social media, for a blog, for anything that you're going to send to be seen, you know, you send a photo to be seen for friends to just look at it on their phone and not to print, this is fine. But if you want to print it, this is not going to work. Anyway, let's open it up. So double click. All right, so here we have an image. It is once again showing up at 100% because it's not too big. It's just barely a bit bigger than the other one. So the whole thing fits in our screen. Now let's head back to Bridge. So go back to Bridge. Okay, perfect. And now let's click on the one that's right next to it. The Imaginary, no, not that one. I'm trying to, oh, I thought that one. Okay, let's go to this one. Hold on. Is this one high res? Okay, so let's go to this one. So kind of above the high pass one, go to the E for exposure. And click on exposure E. We're not going to open it, but you're going to go over here and we're going to look at the numbers, and suddenly we have a ton more pixels in this one, right? You have 2576 by 1932. This is definitely a much bigger file than what we've been looking at before. The numbers are more than double of what we've had. Yet it also says 72 PPI. So interestingly enough, when your camera, when you press the shutter in your camera and the photo gets saved as a JPEG, which is the traditional, it's the typical way for photos to get saved in a camera. You can, if you have the settings, if you can change the settings, if your camera is able to take RAW, then that's a bit different. But 99.9% of cameras and phones, by the way, that you take your pictures by phone, get saved as JPEGs. They always save the photo in 72 PPI. So this is a photograph straight out of how it came from a camera, out of a camera, and thus it will say 72 PPI. So when you look at the numbers down here, that's when you say dimension in inches. Again, it looks like I could print a whole poster out of it, right? And when it comes straight out of the camera, it's always going to be a flat file, a JPEG. All right, now let's go ahead and double click to open this one now. And depending on how big your window screen is or not, see how mine only opened up at 66% as opposed to 100% that the other one was opening up. It opens up and it tries to fill the screen as much as it can, but to fill the screen as much as it can, it's telling me that it's just 66%. Now, looking at the image, does it look like it's in focus to you? Even if you could or not see whether it's, John, you have the sound on both of your computers? You were trying to say something, John? Or someone else? Well, here's the deal that I'm trying to teach you. It's harder to get comments from people when you have to go in and let me just say one thing. When you're in Zoom, if you hold down the space bar, that allows you to speak and then let go of the space bar to unspeak again. So how to say, you hold down the space bar and it releases the microphone for you to say something, and then you let go of space bar and the microphone goes back. But you need to be in Zoom. If you're on any other, if you're clicking on anything else, it doesn't work. It needs to be on Zoom. Okay, so so I can't tell. This is the point I'm trying to teach you. I cannot decide whether this is in focus or not until I see it at 100%. So just because it opened up doesn't mean that what I'm seeing is the best quality I can see it at. It just means that the Photoshop opens it up in a way for you to see the entire image. But down here, it doesn't say 100%. So it's not good enough for me to be able to gauge whether this is in focus or not. So how did we change quickly to 100%? Command or Control 1. So go ahead and hit, if you're on a VDI, Control 1, if you're on a Mac. And now we do have 100%, but we have an 100% that doesn't let me see all the image. This is what I was not able to show you before, because we had an image that 100% was showing everything, but now I have to pan around the image to see what's in focus. So I hold down the space bar and then I can scan over. Oh, wow, it's still going really slow. I can move over to the left. I can move over to the right. I can move the whole thing. But to start with, I was not able to do that. Okay. Now, I want to point to you to this part of the image. Even if some part of the image looks okay, I think the exposure on my face is okay. There's something that when you first open the image in Photoshop, before you spend too much time working it on trying to fix it or make it good or bad, there's some things you need to know about what's doable and what's not doable. I'm talking about checking on focus, first of all, because if you go back to where you see these faces, you'll notice that they're not perfectly in focus. They're kind of soft. I'm actually pretty much well in focus. But I mean, you can even see each grain of snow in there. You can see individual hairs, but not these. But that's normal in a photograph. There's not much light. The light is low. The camera can't capture focus on everything. So it focuses on one thing on the rest. So this isn't the kind of image that'd go, you can't fix it. This is an image where there's not perfect photos on the focus on these three, but it's fixable. But there's something glaringly, literally glaringly, obviously bad about this photo that is not fixable. Can you tell me what it is? I see Bonnie ready to go. What is not fixable in this photo for those of you who are a little bit more accustomed to working with photos in Photoshop? You can tell me.
The contrast?
Yep. The lack of detail in this part of the body, the top of this could look like snow, but it's really the glare of snow on her head, all that stuff that's too white there. In particular, we're missing half a head here of detail. That's not fixable. If you have a photograph that you love, but you know, half of the, wearing a white t-shirt and half of the t-shirt has a streak of sun in there and it's white, that is not fixable. You cannot fix that in Photoshop unless you fake it, unless you have another photograph of the person in a similar situation where you can replace part of the head and stuff like that. But you can't create in a photograph that which never got captured by the camera. So the limitation of this pixel format is that, you know, in Illustrator and vector files, you invent, you create whatever you want. But a photograph is a representation of in pixels of something that existed in reality. And if in the moment it was shot, you got something that's too dark. So if you have a photograph that's too dark, that's fixable because the camera caught too much. And so the whole image got too dark, but the camera has that information. The picture, the pixels have that information. If instead it didn't capture enough information, which is what happens when you have these white spots like that, then that's not fixable. So you look at a photograph that you really want to work on for, you know, making it perfect for your the frame or whatever you want to print it at. And when you see something like that, you need to say, well, it's good enough anyway. The moment is a good enough moment that it reminds me of something beautiful. Great. I'm going to go back to control one. It's a moment that mattered to me. It mattered to my friends. I want this photograph. I don't care if it's not perfect, then sure, go ahead and spend a lot of time fixing it. Okay. But know that you'll never be able to make this look good. So there's things you just need to know from the beginning at a photograph and decide, is it worth fixing? Is it not worth fixing? Something too dark is fixable. Something that has no detail and is blown out, as John said, the contrast, okay? The contrast, there's the dark and the light are, the extremes are too big. The camera couldn't capture it. You need to look at the image and go, well, this is a photo all four of us love of this moment, but it's not a photo I'll ever be able to make, you know, into a much better than what it is. All right. So we don't need to continue working on this image. I just wanted to show you an example of something that you can lighten my eyes here. You can fix a little bit because it's soft, but not off the focus there, but you can never recover that head. All right. I wanted to show you this image for that reason and to show you how you need to head up to 100% to really see an image the condition. So let's head over here to exposure again. And I mean, we can make it better, but we can't fix it completely. And let's close the exposure photo. And now we're left with this one. Jim, there we go. Sue, I know you've been trying to connect a few times and you dropped out. Are you okay now? Is the connection working? Oh, your sound is off. Okay. I can't hear you, but it looks like you're okay, right? You're set up. All right. So this image here is at 100%, and it's a little bit dark, but that's fixable. You kind of, before you spend time on it, you need to look at an image and see if it's worth it. And yes, you can definitely fix the color. It could be a little bit sharper, but I'm saying that and you're looking at it and you're going, no, it looks like it's in focus. Well, it's in focus, but you could still enhance sharpness. As opposed to some things that no matter how good they are, the photograph, you shouldn't bother. So let's head back to Bridge. And one last thing that we're going to open to get this portion of the image done. Look at this image here that says noisy. So go to the ends. Go to the end for noisy. Okay, so here we are. We have an image that's adorable. This is my littlest kid, just harvesting a whole bunch of green. To this day, he's 13, and this is one of his favorite veggies. So actually, it was some foreseeing the future in this image. It looks pretty cool. Looks like it's in focus, right? We look over here, I have quite a few pixels. Again, it's at 72 PPI. Now let's go ahead and open it. So double click. What do you think about the focus now? When it was tiny, when you saw it from afar, everything looks good and in focus. When something is small, it's as if you were looking at a billboard from the car, it's way out there. It looks in focus. Everything looks fine. If you were to walk out of the car, climb up to the billboard and look at it, usually they don't have focus because they have to print things so big. So distance allows you to see things better. So let's go ahead and do Control- on this one to make it smaller. And the smaller it gets, the more in focus it looks, right? Well, focus isn't changing. It's just to show you how important it is to see things at their full quality. So how did we say we had to see this at full quality? I needed to see this at
100%.
100%. So let's go ahead and do the good old Control or Command-1. And that's the actual quality of this image. And this is definitely something that is not only not in focus, but it's also very noisy. And what I mean by noisy, I'm going to go over here to the head part. Look at the skin and look at the texture on the skin. That is not skin texture. Skin texture doesn't have those little dappled dots. That's something called noise, which is something that the camera creates when it doesn't have enough light and it needs to change the ISO. Anyway, long enough in order to be able to take the photograph when it's too dark. And the reason it was too dark is because, there's this bright light in the back and the camera has to lighten up the face. And so it ends up creating a very noisy picture. So you see all this texture on his skin. It hides over here so much because it could be the texture of the sweatshirt, who knows? But you can really see on the skin that there's lots of little dots there that aren't really skin texture. You can also see it here on the green beans. That's not green bean texture, okay? You would not have been able, in fact, you can see it over here in the shadows. You can see all that little, we call it, in old terms of photography, we called it grainy. In digital photography, we call it noise. So there's ways to work to get rid of noise. So we can work on the noise here to fix it. But what's very hard to fix in this image would be the focus. There's no focus. And again, this is an example of another image that is beloved and adorable, and I can't help but smile. So the emotional content is there, but the focus is not there. And if focus is not there and you want to do this, put it on a portrait or, you know, some competition or whatever, you basically have to give up. You can enhance focus, that's soft, like the people in the other portrait, but you can't fake it completely. This is never going to be in focus. This face is too out of focus. Okay. So again, you look at this and you go, well, I can fix that. I can fix this. I can fix this window. Yes, I can fix a bunch of stuff. But if you cannot fix focus, then you need to know that that you can enhance it. But mostly it's going to end up in the pile of beloved photos that won't go on the wall. Okay. So any questions about this 100% or quality? Because again, the important thing is to notice that until you see it 100%, you cannot ever answer whether the quality is good or bad. Okay, so if there's no more questions, let's go and close the noisy one. And we're back to the good old high pass, which now if you were wondering before about sharpness, you really do see that this one is in focus. See, you can see the details, the cracks on the walls, the stuff like that. But this is as big as we're going to get it. If we start getting bigger than 100% now, then in fact, it starts becoming softer. And that's because you're expanding it to beyond the capacity of the screen to show it to you in good shape. And as soon as you start going up to 400, 500%, you start seeing the pixels. I don't know if you can see, but right now I went up to 300%. And now the edges of the lines are all pixelated. See the edges? And that's not because the image doesn't have focus. That's because I went past 300%. Just trying to show you the difference, okay? So go to 300 or 400% and try to look at the edge of the kettle over here, and you'll start seeing the pixels. See that? There's nothing wrong with the image. I'm just trying to look at it beyond 100%. Okay. Now, certain screens, and I don't know what screens you have, certain monitors, depending on the resolution, might be able to still show you a good quality image at 200%. If you have like on a laptop that you have a retina screen, you know, a very high resolution, 200% might still show you a good line. But once you hit 300 or 400%, you start seeing that little pixelated edge. And again, just see the edges of the spears here, or whatever these things are. That is not a problem with the photo. That is a problem with you've zoomed in too much. Okay, so I'm gonna back off with a control minus or command minus and back to 100%. And now that little line there shows up as well as it would show up if I were to print this image, which means I'm not seeing the pixels at all. It's looking sharp. Okay. I'm looking at my phone here. 11:09. Okay. I'm just thinking about the break I did or didn't give you, but I think we can continue a little bit longer, right? Because we're jumping in. Yeah. Just remember, jump out and jump in if you need, but it doesn't need to, I don't want to give us more of a break. Okay. So let's play a little bit around what's going on in this image. First of all, we have, do we have any part of this image that's blown out? Does anything here look like it's just not savable?
Looks good.
It looks good this time, yeah? I don't have any big patches. In fact, the brightest patches that I have here are still full of detail. I can still see that it's a, you know, material and there, nothing's blown out. So if something's too dark, that's okay. Is there anything here that seems too dark? Bonnie, I know you're speaking, but I don't, if you're speaking to me, you need to open your sound, unmute yourself, but I'm not sure if you were speaking to me. Sometimes. Yes.
My space bar is just a little bit too slow to react.
That's okay.
The only thing that might be lightened is behind the kettle, in my opinion.
Mhm. So it might be possible to lighten something in behind the kettle if we want to see inside or not. It looks almost like there's something there that it looks almost like smoke. It's probably something I could see. The question is, do I need to see inside or not? Or is it fine to have this contrast? Or do we think that if it depends, if this was maybe, 6 p.m. in winter, it might be this darker, but if it was supposed to be a midday shot, then it's probably too dark and it got underexposed. We don't know because we weren't the photographers, we weren't there. So that's the first thing I want to tell you about taking a picture and fixing it. It's that if you were there, you know what the conditions were. You might want to make it right or correct to the conditions. But a lot of the times you don't remember. It was too long ago. You shot this 6 months ago. Was it dark? Was it light? So a lot of fixing photos on Photoshop isn't fixing them to make them correct, especially if the photo's not yours, but it's a subjective situation. Like you look at it and you go, well, I'd like this to be lighter. I'd like this to be smaller. So it's a little bit the artistic portion of this. You've got what you got from the camera. Now, whatever you want to make out of it is up to you. Some of you guys might decide you want to make it brighter or not, or darker, or see the inside or not see the inside. So a lot of times you hear the concept of trying to make something be correct, but correct is a very subjective thing. Unless you were there and you have something to compare it to, which as a professional photographer, you would have done a color check. You might have a photograph with a card, stuff like that. But if not, all you can do is guess. So we're going to guess at this, and we're going to say that we can work with it a little bit with regards to color. And I'm going to say that when how many of you guys work with Lightroom? How many of you guys work with Lightroom? I'm seeing.
We do.
Okay, go ahead and head down. Oh, I have a request for you guys. Thanks for, I'm glad I said this question because I was forgetting to say it. Zoom has some controls that I've used for the whole last year really well for people to answer things. And then they took those controls off that made it very uncomfortable the last few weeks. And now they've put them back again because I guess enough people complained. So my request is, I know, it was so hard the first few weeks. So between this week and next week, please update your Zoom program to the latest Zoom version. So this is homework, go in and make sure to update your Zoom, because finally we can go back to having you guys say yes or no and answer to my stuff, because otherwise I can't get a feeling for what's happening out there really well. But they've fixed what they put back in what they had taken off. And now I can ask you guys, okay, tell me yes, tell me no, tell me maybe, tell me all those kind of things. But you need to update your Zoom to the latest version, okay? If you don't know how to do that, I can show you at the end of this class. I can stay a little bit and show you how to update it, or you can just Google how to update Zoom or something like that, okay? So put that in as your big homework. Another thing that I want you guys to do as homework, we unfortunately, looking at the calendar, have another break next week, believe it or not, because it's President's Day weekend. So I know this, God, yet last Friday's class missing was really bad for the timing of the class. But anyway, next weekend we have no class. So let me get this ringer up. So next week, we still have 9 classes total, but this is a planned miss. So I have a request for you guys. I want you guys to look. I'm going to send you an email, and I want you guys to look in photos of your own that you have that you might want to work with that have problems. And I'm going to have a little list of what type of problems that your photos need to have for you to be able to work with, so that later when we go over something, you can try to apply that same thing to one of your photographs, okay? One or a few of your photographs. And also, some of you guys who know more than others, when I have you open one of my photos for something, you can open a parallel photo that has that problem. And then as I show you how to fix it in mine, when I'm taking some time helping others, then you can do that same fix in yours that has that problem. And that way you keep yourselves working. Does that make sense? So, so I want you guys to do that over this week and find some photos that you can work with of your own. You're always welcome to open these photos that I gave you, but my goal is for you to know how to use the tools and apply them to your photos. So update Zoom and look for a series of photos that I will be sending you a list for, okay? And then practice, because practice and answer, send me emails and ask me questions, because I'm hating the fact that we have such a big space in between our classes. Okay, so in this image, the reason I was asking about Lightroom and I wanted to see a show of hands that I can't yet because you haven't updated Zoom, and that's why I triggered my question. I saw two people waving, but if you're down there and you're in the video off, I can't be waved.
It's really a function of switching back and forth to Zoom from Bridge, from Photoshop. It just takes time to flip screens to respond.
Yeah. When you, I'm noticing a note from Carrie. Are you getting photos that are kind of like half black?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
On both of those photos, the Coca-Cola one and the
Yeah.
group
So
photo.
what's happening is that you didn't disconnect and connect back to your Google Drive file stream.
Oh, okay.
So go down here to this little arrow,
Okay.
click on this, and then you need to go to this guy, preferences, and disconnect account. And then you'll have the sign in and sign in again. And once you do those steps, then all your photos will show up. So Carrie's having something where her photos show up like a little bit of red and then the rest is black. And that's because you have to connect and disconnect from Google Drive each time you connect to VDI. Otherwise, your photos show up that way, which are kind of half corrupted. So I'm just showing her because she made a note on the chat. Can I ask you a thing about the chat? Is that I'm looking at the chat. When you write to me in the chat, there's like 3 or 4 people who've written to me directly, which means that the rest of the people don't see your note. And if it's something private, like I'm not feeling well, I'm gonna leave early or something like that, that's fine. But when it's something about the class, go ahead and make sure that when you go write, instead of saying to Deanna, say to everyone. That way everyone sees your question. For a couple of reasons, someone might have your same question, right? Someone else might have these corrupted photos and they might go, oh, it's happening to me too. And it's good for everyone to see what's happening. And also, so people know what I'm answering. And that there's a question you can point me to, hey, someone asked you a question and I'm barreling through. So keep your eyes on the chat. Go ahead and when you write, you can choose to everyone or to me, and try to write to everyone unless it's truly a personal question. Okay. All right. Otherwise, it feels like I'm talking, people don't know who I'm talking to, and it's just because I'm answering chat things to everyone. All right. So in this image here, when you look at it, it doesn't seem that there's anything overtly wrong with it. So why would you even want to work with it in Photoshop? Well, in Photoshop, you can enhance, take any photograph that's good and make it be awesome, right? But that's something that you can also do in Lightroom. For those of you who use Lightroom, there's so much of Lightroom Photoshop that overlaps, right? And when you want to just enhance the qualities of a photo that are already in existence, it's pretty much the same to do it in one or to do it in another. Some of the tools are in fact identical and some are different. So for those of you who use both programs, then why would you come into Photoshop? Because Photoshop provides you anything beyond what I just said, meaning when you really want to focus on a specific part of Photoshop, of the photo, on a specific area, on a specific color, on a specific something, then Photoshop can minutely go into pixel per pixel, even if you want to fix things. So, and it is an oversimplification, but Lightroom works more with the generalities of the photograph. And we can do that in Photoshop just as well. But in Photoshop, we can also separate this kettle from its background. We can take this red wall and make it green while still having the kettle be identical to what it is. We can take that little bottom kind of cushion that the kettle is sitting on and decide to make that bottom cushion, red like the wall. Like, you can separate things from the rest of it and address them very distinctly. You can also do way bigger things like that, replace heads, replace faces, change the image completely, as we saw the other day, bring in different images and create that little collage of a woman and an eagle. So that's the big difference. So the initial looking at an image and fixing it is something that you might need to decide if you're a Lightroom user, or whether to do it in Lightroom or in Photoshop. Now, we are in Photoshop. And by the way, for people who use Photoshop deeply, like I do, I skip Lightroom so many times because I can do so much more in Photoshop while doing the same things that Lightroom does. But when you're just a pure photographer and you don't do anything else than photography, I'm a graphic designer, so I use a whole bunch of other tools in Photoshop than what Lightroom can use. And you just do photos, then many times you just stay in Lightroom and don't move into Photoshop. So anyway, it's a choice, because now that Bruce is teaching Lightroom, I know many more of you guys are beginning to have that distinction. And so I'm trying to explain what you would do in one or another. But there's a tool that Photoshop has that is also available in Lightroom. And for those of you who have Photoshop, it's not Express. What's the name of I'm trying to blank the name of the easy Photoshop. Not
Elements.
the easy. Elements. Thank you. It's not the easy Photoshop, was weird to say, the other level. Photoshop Elements and Bridge. All of these programs have something called the Camera Raw engine. And when you open up Camera Raw, you can use the same tools across the board for all of these to fix a lot of the basic things that a photograph needs fixing, like light, lightness and darkness tends to be the first thing that needs to be fixed in an image. So other than a blowout that you just saw that can't be fixed, you can adapt with the Raw engine. Now, this is a JPEG image. A JPEG image means that it came straight out of the camera, and in the camera it already got messed up with, right? Messed up with means that the camera already took some of that quality away, which you're like, wait a minute, it came out of the camera, how can it already have lost? Yes, because the JPEG is a version, it's a type of photograph. It's the type of format that the camera, in order to pack tons of photos in one little card, you know how many thousands of photos it fits in one little card? The camera compresses your image. The moment it was taken, it already creates a loss of quality by compressing it to making it smaller so you can fit a ton of them. So a JPEG is already less higher quality than the moment that it could be. That said, it also applies some post-processing. And what post-processing means is the camera already makes it a little bit sharper, a little bit warmer, a little bit, it balances the light. It does things automatically for you to make the file look better. So many times a JPEG, when you look at it in the camera, it's ready to print because the camera has automatically fixed some things for it, right? And this is an example. This one is a JPEG. It comes like this out of the camera, and then you can decide whether you still need to fix more of it or not. Let's head back to Bridge, and let me show you the opposite of that, which would be a raw photograph. A raw photograph is when your camera looks at the moment, takes a picture of the moment, and every single bit of that moment, all those pixels get recorded, and exactly as they got recorded, they get saved into an image that does not get post-processed. It does not get compressed. It does not get lightened or darkened or focused or sharpened or anything like that. Okay. So that raw image has the potential to end up being way better than the JPEG if you post-process it here in Photoshop. But usually the raw image, when it comes up, is actually worse quality than the JPEG because the camera hasn't done anything to it. So it kind of looks more blah and less ready to go. It is a way bigger image and has many more pixels. The camera has not compressed it. So let's go ahead and show you an example of a raw image. So over here on, look at, I'm starting from the very top again. So let's scroll all the way to the top. There we go. So when you look at the extensions of images, PSD stands for Photoshop document. So that's already been layered. JPEG is the one that's flattened or straight out of the camera, or someone's already worked on it and reflattened it, recompressed it. So if it's a JPEG, it's compressed. It's less quality than it could be. And as you keep going, you're stopping finally. Here we go. This is a DNG, .dng. See that? Adjusting color .dng. A DNG is a version of a raw file. Raw files have many different extensions. Here's another DNG. Here's another DNG. Here's an .nef. .nef. That's also a raw file that came out of Nikon camera. I'm trying to see whether I put the CR2s here somewhere. So there's, you'll see somewhere here a CR2. I don't know exactly which one it is right now. Here's another NEF. So that's again a raw file. So there's so many different possible extensions it could have. Oh, here's actually a TIF. The TIF is a TIFF that is not a raw file, but it is also a big file. We'll talk about that when we get to GIMP. So all of these photos are pixel-based graphic images, but they have different quality. Here's a CR2 right there. That raw there is a CR2 raw image. So each camera manufacturer uses its own raw extension. So CR2 is a Canon, NEF is a Nikon, and so on and so forth. The other one, the only one that's neutral is the DNG. That's the Adobe version of RAW. Okay, so there's other distinctions between CR2s, NEF, and whatever, but right now I don't want to teach you in depth RAW. I just wanted to point out that all these that I've been saying, NEF, CR2s, DNGs, they have not been post-processing camera. So let's go open one of them. And let's head down to the one that starts with the word raw. And then it has a series of numbers, and then it says morse.nef. And this is a picture of like a waterfall. Now, when you select that image in Bridge, you'll see that if we head over to the metadata, wow, look at how many pixels that thing has. 5,000 pixels per side now, as opposed to we were seeing little puny numbers like 900 before, right? So this is a ton of pixels. 5,000 pixels per side times 3,000 pixels per height, which, by the way, if you still remember from when you were in school, if you do one, length times width, you get the full number of pixels. So let me do that. 5928 times 3264 equals 16 million pixels. So this image has 16 million pixels in it. Okay. So that's a whole bunch of pixels. And let's see down here. Let's double click and let's see what it looks like in Photoshop. So when you double click on it, something interesting is going to happen to this image. We've all known what Photoshop looks like, but now I opened a raw image. And instead of opening in Photoshop, the way the other JPEG opened, it opens in something called Camera Raw. Now, is anyone not seeing this? If you have already opened Camera Raw in your own computers before this class, you might have already bypassed this. And so you might not be getting the welcome get started, but those of us who just opened Photoshop 2021 for the first time, we're getting the little welcome. So let's go ahead and just say get started to get rid of this window. And so we've double clicked on a raw image in Bridge, and it's bringing us to this Camera Raw engine. Now, this is the part that I'm saying is identical, or almost identical. If it's in Photoshop, if it's in Photoshop Elements, or if it's in Lightroom, or if it's, as you saw, I clicked the straight out of Bridge. So Bridge is what brought me to Raw. So Bridge also has Raw. Okay. Now what this means is that this allows me to process the photograph as a whole image. In Camera Raw, I won't be able to mask out this little tree to fix it, or to put a little bird flying in the waterfalls, or to, you know, do individual work on one part or the other. But I will be able to fix the whole thing as a totality, where I look at it and I go, well, I want to make all the tones a bit lighter, all the tones a bit darker, or I just want to make my whites lighter, but my darks darker, or I just want to make, you know, and make the whole thing might be too green. I want to make it bluer or redder. So I can consider working on the whole or on areas. Like I can go, well, maybe this area in general can be darkened, this area can be lightened, as opposed to exactly precisely this leaf can be fixed, which is how precise it gets inside of Photoshop. Does that make sense? It's more of a generality fixer. So when I open a photograph, either the red one in Photoshop or this one in Raw, the first thing I need to think about it is what needs to be fixed. Now, let me just say one thing. How you are seeing this image on your screen is probably very different than how I'm seeing it in my screen, because your screen might or might not, ouch, I'm having the same issues I had before. Wow. Sorry, it's just jumping around a really weird way. Your screen might be more or less calibrated. When we're all in the classroom, in the lab at school, we all have very similar screens, and we can kind of even then see that there's a bit of a difference for the same image in different screens, and yet we're all working on a very similar monitor. I always tell people, you know, when you are going to buy a TV and the store has, you know, 10 TVs and they're all showing the same image, but it looks very different from each other. That's because each TV is calibrated to a different set of colors and sharpness and tone and stuff. So I don't know what you guys are seeing versus what I am seeing. But the important thing is that that's going to affect how the end photo is going to look. So if you look at this image and your screen is way too bright or way too dark, you might think that you need to brighten or darken this image as opposed to what I might be seeing, because our screens are different. You know what I mean? So it's very important that if you take this seriously, like if you're doing a lot of Photoshop in classes and you fix photos for shows, Jacob over here does photos that he sells. You need to have a screen that's actually correctly calibrated. We can talk more about that next time, but right now I mainly want to say that if you, at the very least, don't have your screen at its brightest setting. Okay, so if you're on a Mac, I know how to have you fix that, but those of you who are on a Mac, you can look at the top row of your, buttons. By the way, it's 11:30 and we're in the extra time, you know, and I'm trying to show this up here, but this top row here has some buttons that on the very left, right. Okay. I think this might be my call, guys. I need to accept this call. Give me a second. Hello? Oh, shoot, please don't tell me I messed up again. I can't, when I've got my headsets on, it doesn't let me. Let me see if I can call them back. Hello? Who's this? Okay. No. Good, that was not it. Sorry, some wrong number. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, for those of you who came in late, there's a call that I need to get once they call me and they keep calling me, but it's a wrong number. Okay. I was saying that, that you need to look at your screen, and when you see those little little sun type of icons under the F1 and F2 keys, when you press those to the right or to the left, your screen's going to see how it's, I don't know if you can see it darkening or lightening. It's probably not for you, for me, because it's my screen, but for you, your screen should be darkening or lightening. Okay.
Pressing
so
what? Pressing what did you say?
If you're on a Mac, okay, then look for at the very top, this is the escape key, top left of your keyboard. The next two keys have like little sun on them, bigger and smaller. So one makes it brighter and one makes it darker, right? And like a little image appears of a sun on your screen. When you do that, try to leave this in the middle point, like not too dark, not too light, like go to the sun and have the amount of lightness be right in the middle. For those of you who have a PC or other laptops, many of them, you can control it. It's a similar kind of icon. It's like a little sun. On your top row of your keyboard, you can control the lightness or darkness of your screen on PCs as well. The only ones that, if not, the monitors tend to have like buttons on the sides where you can click and move them. The whole point I'm saying is it might look too dark. I might have gotten accustomed to brightening your screen to the very brightest. And if you do that, that's not realistic to how photos are supposed to look. And at first, your screen, when you move it to the middle point, might look kind of dark. But after a while, when you get accustomed to it, that's actually a better brightness setting for your monitor. And is so even to even start with your fixing of a photograph, you need to start with an image that isn't looking too dark or too light, just so to say, in a fake way, because of the brightness of your monitor. Other than that, there's things called color calibration that you can put on your screen that I'm going to show you some later, but you need to invest some money, like $300 or so for one of those, if you really care about it. So the best you can do right now is work with your brightness to make sure that you're not over brightening something. Okay. All right. So the thing that I wanted to say is that now that I've got this, hopefully that you all kind of set the settings so that they're not so bright. Now you look in the image, you can look at the image overall and decide whether there's something that you want to fix in it or not. And this list of choices that you have here take you through a really good process of fixing your image. And so what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with this little tool here that's called Basic. And so when you click on Basic, it opens up. See how all these things appeared? If I click again on Basic, it closes up. So when you see this little arrow or the word Basic and you click on it, a whole bunch of stuff expands. And then to close it, you hit the word Basic again and it collapses. Okay. So those of you who have used RAW with me before, RAW changed its appearance in last fall was the first time we had the first version in Photoshop that had this new appearance. So if you've used Basic with me in the past set of classes, it looked quite different. So it's a big shift. So hit the word Basic. All of this opens up. And we're going to be working with these sliders. Sorry, the word isn't coming out. In order to see if we can do anything with this photograph. And to start with, at the very top, it's telling me, and we're not going to get into the intricacies of RAW. We're going to do more RAW processing next week. But there's two main things it needs to tell me. First of all, the white balance. Is the white looking white, or is it looking greenish or yellowish or reddish or bluish? And it's very hard ourselves without a trained eye and with a monitor that might or not be color calibrated to see. So you can kind of play around with these settings. Just try. This is what the camera thought was correct. Click on this here. Let's see what the computer thinks it can fix it to. And whoa, look at the big difference between what the camera did and what the computer chose. Did you see the difference there in coloring? Let's go back from as shot, where the image is very blue, to auto, where it becomes very warm. Do you see the big difference there? Huge shift.
Wow.
That's the big color balance difference. Now, you might have a preference and you might say, well, I don't like what the computer did. I prefer, something else. And that's what I meant about correcting a photograph is a very subjective thing. Like if you're trying to tell a story of this place that you want to be very welcoming and you want people to think fuzzy, warm feelings about, you might want the warmer version. If you're trying to talk about, how cold you were when you got to this place that you had been freezing all day and, it was middle of winter and you were wet, then you might want to keep it bluer to give everyone the feeling that this image that is editorializing your story looks cold and uncomfortable, right? So you play with color to give a certain feeling, but I'm just showing you the difference that color balance might make. Over here, if you decide to say that it's supposed to be very sunny daylight, when you click on very sunny daylight, then the photograph switches to show you how to correct for sunny daylight, and it goes back to being kind of bluish. If you tell it that you are shooting in tungsten lighting, which is very orange, the photograph is going to get fixed by trying to fix that orange light by making it very blue, which sounds weird and wrong. But by you choosing tungsten, what you told the computer is, I shot this under tungsten lighting. Tungsten lighting was the lights that we used to have in our house, the warm, orange, glowy bulbs that now we've had to replace with LEDs. Those lights are very orange. And so something shot inside looked orange. People looked orange before. Well, you put this there and the camera fixes that by adding blue, and this would look good. But now it looks horrible because it wasn't shot in tungsten lighting. Fluorescent is very green lighting. So if you try to fix green lighting, it's going to make this be very red. So you have to play around with these until you find a color setting that works. I'm going to go ahead and say that the one that I prefer right now is, I'm going to head over to auto. I think this is a more realistic setting than the blue one. But maybe it got a little bit too warm. And then if so, you can still go to these things and you can fix that a little bit on your own. So you can go ahead and say, well, I prefer this white balance that's not so cold, but I can still add some more warmth by moving either more blue or more yellow. So I'm going to make it a little bit bluer by moving this little slider over a teensy bit. And now I get to be a little bit less yellow. And so I'm recovering a little bit of, I think that automatic made it a little bit too blue. So now I found a better spot that for my screen, which is color powder braided, looks better. And I just found a spot a little bit to the left. As soon as you do that, this up here turns into custom, because now I'm hand moving these things around all over. And I'm thinking it still looks a little bit red, got a little bit too much red in it. So I can go over here and just minutely move this over into the green to color correct a bit for that red. Now, to learn how to move these tools, you need to just be exposed to a lot of photos and practice and play with them. Because in the end, as I said before, it's subjective, and you might not notice, you might not know what looks better until you just move them around and find. So I think that from the beginning to now, I like this better. But how do I compare from the beginning to now? Well, I can go ahead down here at the bottom and see here where I have like this little toggle like half thing. I'll click on it one time, and that's showing me the default settings that I had before. And now I toggle it again, and it's showing me now. Okay, so toggle to the default settings before I started fixing it, and click on it again. It toggles to what I just it's a before and after. I can also actually see the before and after if I want to. And that's this icon on the left. And if I click on that one time, then it's going to show me on the left side the before, on the right side the after. So I get to see what I started with and what I've got going now. By the way, I did want to say, some of you guys have met him when in my personal in-person classes, but he is not here in the digital classes. But this photograph belongs to a student, one of these, Thomas Morse, who gave us this photo for us to use. He's a professional photographer, and he comes to my classes. And this is one of his photographs. I just wanted to give him some credit for that. It's a beautiful photograph of a waterfall that he's letting us use. Okay, so this is my before and my after. And you guys, this is what I meant about subjective. You could prefer this one or that one. This one looks too blue to me. Even the green looks blue. But if you don't know what I mean by that, this is the kind of thing that helps you train your eyes by doing these things and then watching the comparisons. But in the end, people are never going to see this. People are only going to see your after, right? So although it's a good idea to do the before and afters for you to gauge what you're doing to an image, ultimately, people never see the before and after. They only see your after. So you need to be happy with your after. So it's not a good thing to edit while looking at the before and after the whole time. The before is just a starting point. The after is all that matters. So to get out of this mode of before and after, you can go ahead and, the same thing that you clicked on once now has 3 little settings. If you keep clicking on them, it changes to like the very far left, it changes to different before and after views. So now when you click again, it switches to a before and after, which is harder to distinguish, but in the middle, the left side is the blue one and the right side, it's kind of like divided by a long line in the middle. The right side is your after, the left side is your before. When you click down here again, you go to a before and after that's up and down. And then you click one more time and it goes to before and after up and down where the line is now horizontal, but in the same image. So it cycles you the 4 different versions of before and after. And the final time that you click, it's back to just after. Okay. So you click 5 times to cycle. I'm going to do that again. First time you click, you got the side by side, left and right, before and after. Then you got the left and right in one image. Then you click and you start cycling through the before and afters, but up and down and up and down. Okay, until you end up with the after only. And now I'm in the after only. Okay, so now I have kept you guys for more than the 15 minutes I said I'd keep you. It's already 11:50 instead of 11:45, so I got distracted by the time. So now let's finish this one up. Let's say that we like what we've done and we're gonna keep working on it, but right now we're just happy with the basics changes that I made. So if we want to keep the change, we say done. And then we don't even go into Photoshop. It just takes us back to Bridge. So it sees that I'm not about to do anything specific differently. So if I want to say now, make some specific changes, like I want to give more definition to the white here, I want to see the stuff better, I'll have to open it. Open means open in Photoshop. So then that would go into Photoshop. But if I'm done, which for now we are for the day, and I just want this change to be recorded, I'll say the word done. If I don't want anything that I've just done to stay, then I'll do cancel, and then I'll lose the changes that I've changed. But I don't want to lose these changes.
Where's done?
On the bottom right, I see open, cancel, or done. Do you see where I'm pointing? Open, cancel, or done. If you don't see that, I'll have you share my screen. But I don't, if I open it, it opens into Photoshop. Cancel means I lose what I just did. Done means I want to keep what I did. So I'm going to hit done, and then you can share your screen with me if it's not happening to you. I'm going to say done. Photoshop closes, that closes up, and then I'm left with Photoshop, which for now we're going to close as well. So close that one. And I'm going to close Photoshop, but I don't want to close Bridge because I wanted to show you that what happened in Bridge now is that, and watch, look at my Bridge, because my Bridge is the one that we're all using. My Bridge is the one that we're all accessing when we open Photoshop, when we open this file. Those of you who are on VDI, we're all opening from here. So you see how now I have this little icon up there that I didn't have before? I don't have, and that means that it's a raw that's been worked on, that some of the settings have been changed, okay? So this little preview is of my current color, not the bluish color that I had at the beginning. So, and that's what indicates that it's been edited already, the fact that I have that little icon that wasn't there before. Okay, so guys, if you know you have a possibility to shoot raw photographs, please choose some raw photos also to work on for yourselves. And if you do not know, if you know how to shoot photographs that are raw, if you don't know if your camera can shoot raw photographs, then go to the manuals. All the cameras, you look for the manual model, you type it up online and ask for the manual or the user guide. You can check in there to see if your camera has a lot of point and shoots that you buy now. As long as you paid more than $300 or so, a lot of them can shoot in RAW. You have to change the settings to shoot in RAW. And if you have an iPhone or any phone, any smartphone, you can also shoot in RAW in most of them. So you can look up and see how to get a RAW photo, as long as it's within, I think it has to be iPhone 7 and up. I think it's 7 and up. I think 6 doesn't do RAW. So anyway, look into that if you want to know. As you begin to learn more about raw images, you might be more excited to take some of them in RAW to begin with, not all of them, because they take up much more space. Okay, I'll email you with a list of things you need to look for. And sorry, we ended up with only a 5-minute call because the call didn't come in. So I only gave you a 5-minute break total. So I hope it wasn't too exhausting. And I'll see you guys not this Friday, but the next. Okay, so next Friday, there's no class. I'll see you the following Friday. But please, it's 2 weeks. So email me, ask me questions, keep in touch in between. All right. Stay behind. If you have any other questions now that you need to stay behind, please stay behind and ask me. I'm still here. Bye, guys.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Any questions? Let me know.
Deanna, I have a quick question.
Yes, hi, Leland.
Hi, I took some pictures of the moon, probably like last month, and some of them are red and clear and blue, and you can see the craters and stuff. So I'm trying to do some editing on them. I was wondering exactly what kind of things I can do to kind of spice the image up, because it's just like a black image, and then there's like the moon, which is really clear. So I'm trying to think about like adding some like stars or constellations around it to make it look a little bit more fancy. So I don't know. how to
Yeah, I
do
mean,
that.
as long as you don't care about reality, that's a good idea. So it always, no, I mean, it depends, you know, if your photo's gonna be art, you can do whatever you
Mhm.
want. If it's gonna be, hey, this is the photo from Santa Barbara of the moon, then journalistically, you can't do that. So that's a choice. But yeah,
Mhm.
so, but do you have good photos of skies, or would you have to borrow some from stock photos or stuff like that? Skies with
I
stars?
mean, I've been having quite a challenge trying to get like clear images of stars, because
Mhm.
I guess I just don't have the right equipment to,
Equipment, I know, it's hard.
yeah. So,
Because you can go to stock photo sites, and
okay.
you know, I think in many of the classes that we've had, I've pointed you to good free stock photo sites where you might be able
Okay.
to find one of those. But the problem is you'll have to compare the quality, because if you have these really high quality star photos and your moon is maybe less high quality because of your equipment, then
Mhm.
you need to degrade the quality of the stars to
Oh,
match your moon.
okay.
You know what I mean? Do you have
Right.
it open there that you can show me at all, your photo? Or-
It's currently in an archive, so I probably will send you some. Take a
Yeah,
look.
go ahead and send me one to have an idea of what you're talking about, so I can give you
Okay.
better feedback.
Yeah,
Okay.
I shot them all in RAW, because I realized that
Mhm.
the quality that they were on wasn't as good. So all of them
Yeah.
are RAW. They're really big files. I mean, it's like I can zoom in on it. I can see craters very clearly.
So you
So
know what you might want to do? You might want to bring one,
mm,
put up in your pipeline Google Drive, upload
okay,
one there. If it's a big file, it won't email, upload one up there. And then you
okay,
can share the link and share that link with me, and I can, and give me permission to open it, because then I can
okay,
go into just your pipeline for just that one photo. If you share
okay,
the link with me,
sure, okay,
and that one I can see it in there.
okay,
If not, if you can save me like a small version of it, save as or something, a smaller version for me to see the photo,
mhm,
even if I don't have the full quality, just to have an idea.
okay. Sounds good. I will do that.
Okay,
All right. Thank you, Deanna.
you're
Have you
welcome.
tried?
What Aldi has something to say. What's up?
Yeah, I don't. How clear am I? I was wondering if you knew of Pixabay, because I've had
Oh
some.
yeah.
They're not royalty free. They're for commercial use, so they're completely.
Yeah.
for everything.
Leland's taken a lot of my classes, and other than in Photoshop, and many of my other classes, I point to a lot of these free sites. One of them is definitely Pixabay, and so he has a whole listing of
All
sites
right.
of free photos, and Pixabay is one of the great ones. I don't do it in Photoshop because here we're usually working on our own photos, but and when you download these photos, rarely do they have anything that needs to be fixed on them. But in the Illustrator, InDesign website, all of those, I point to a lot of these sites. So yeah, I'm glad you know about Pixabay. It's a great site to use free stock photos.
Yeah, I was just
So
saying because
I
I've
can,
specifically had some good constellation photos off there that I've been able to manipulate. So it would
Ooh,
be
okay,
something that suits.
that's
okay.
great. In fact, some of these here might come from Pixabay. If you notice in Bridge, there's a couple down here that are like a shutter. They're just backgrounds. And down there at the bottom, it says Pexels, Pixabay, stuff
Right.
like that. Those are from Pixabay.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great.
So
I'll take a look at
it's a
that.
great site.
Thanks.
Just make sure though that the only thing for it to look slightly realistic would be again, I don't know the quality of your moon, but I'm assuming that was
Mhm.
just general regular camera material. Your quality is going to be probably less than whatever you get from Pixabay. So you might want to have to do some matching so that it looks a bit more realistic. But
Okay.
yeah, sounds
Yeah,
like
I'll go through my drive and check it out.
okay. And send me
Thanks,
some samples to know what you're talking about. Cool.
Sure. All right.
Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
Deanna. Have a good
You're
weekend.
welcome. See you next week.
Have a great break.
You too. Bye.